Good morning. Chairman Powell is having a little difficulty with sound this morning. Well, good to see everybody back. I know we got some folks that had to run back home to different places last night and may be dragging a little bit this morning with the weather and everything getting back here. So in order to stay on time, I know everybody wants to get back home this evening, and we've got a little rain to drive through if we're going north. So our first presenter this morning is Dr. Jeff Bearden. And bless his heart, yes, he is the brother of Director Tim Bearden. Some folks just have a burden that can't be helped, and unfortunately Jeff does. But Jeff is the superintendent for Forsyth County Schools. He has been around the state a little bit, Rome City, school superintendent, Fayette County school superintendent, worked for several years in the state of Maine, and I believe got a degree from up in Maine, the University of Maine, a bachelor's, master's degree from the University of Maine. And Jeff is here this morning to tell us a little bit about a soft skill program that they're doing in Forsyth County. We've heard the topic of soft skills coming from employers that we've listened to this year, and the lack of soft skills that they're finding in young employees coming in, and Forsyth County has kind of been on the cutting edge of trying to meet that need. And Dr. Bearden, we're glad to have you with us today, and glad to see the more intelligent of the brothers actually speaking to us. So the floor is yours, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Before we start, I would like to ask, since Veterans Day is Saturday, if we have any veterans in the room, would you please stand and be recognized? Do we have veterans? Tim, there's one, I know that. Well, for those of you who know Tim, you probably know we grew up in a military family. Our grandfather was 20 years in the Air Force. Our dad was 20 years in the Air Force. We have an uncle that was 30 years in the Air Force. And Tim and I and both of our older brothers served in the Air Force. So the military is very special to us, and Veterans Day is a special day. And certainly for anybody out there watching who is a veteran, thank you for your service. I want to take just a moment, if I could, to tell you a little bit about Forsyth County Schools before we get into my presentation. We are a rapidly growing school system. Currently, we have about 48,000 kids in Forsyth County. Our growth rate, we're averaging 1,500 to 1,800 new students every single year. That has been happening for the past several years and for the foreseeable future. If you've been up to our county, you struggle getting from point A to point B because there's so much construction, which a lot of challenges on the infrastructure as well for our county government and the city of Cumming in terms of new roads and expanding roadways. But a lot of people are continuing to move up into our area, and one of the primary reasons, quite honestly, is Forsyth County Schools. We have an outstanding school system that I'm really proud to represent. Our school system graduation rate last year, 2017, was 94.4%, which is the highest in the history of Forsyth County Schools. And I proudly say that because as we continue to grow, by any metric you want to look at, our achievement continues to improve, and we're proud of that fact. The CCRPI scores just came out last week, and that stands for, if you don't know that acronym, College and Career Readiness Performance Index. Our score was 92.5, once again, one of the highest in the state. ACT scores for the third consecutive year. Forsyth County Schools has the highest ACT scores in the state of Georgia. SAT scores the highest among Metro Atlanta and large systems. So the achievement is there. And while that achievement is very important, what else is important to us is to make sure we're taking care of the social and emotional well-being of our children and making sure character education is very much embedded into our curriculum. So you have a handout in front of you, and just to make you work a little bit, I'm going to ask you to turn to the back page first, which is our learner profile. I want to speak to that for just a few moments. This is a very important document in our school system. What you see in front of you, these are the skills that our community, not Jeff Bearden as superintendent, not our school board, not our school administration, but our community came together several years ago, and we asked ourselves this question: what are the essential skills that we think every student who graduates from one of our high schools needs to possess. And this took about a year to come up with this document. We got input from our business community, from parents and staff and students, and took, again, about a year to put this document together. We wanted to make sure we limit it to no more than 5 to 7 skills, because we want to make sure we implement it with fidelity. If you're familiar with the work of Stephen Covey, Covey says, begin with the end in mind. This is the end in mind for Forsyth County Schools. These are the skills we want every student to possess. This document must be displayed in every classroom in Forsyth County Schools, and it is. And it's prominently displayed throughout our county office, administration buildings, and throughout our community. And when I meet with my parent and community advisory, student advisory, faculty advisory, we're always referring back to the learner profile. This is a living document. So I want to just take a time and look at the 5 skills that we identified. The first one is pursue continuous learning. Second is exhibit strong personal qualities. 3, utilize creative and critical thinking. And 4 and 5 directly aligns with what I want to talk to you about today, and that's engage and contribute, interact effectively. And if you look at the bullets below those 2, we want our students to be a world-wise person. We want them to develop relationships across boundaries and cultures, interact in a multilingual community, because we know that's the world in which they're going to live, in which they do live, demonstrate civility and respect differences in others, to communicate responsibly through reading, writing, listening, work collaboratively with others, and cultivate and maintain positive relationships. And that all aligns, again, with what we call social and emotional learning, character education, soft skills. Sometimes all of those terms are used synonymously, and so we just kind of wrap them all together. So I want to turn back to the first page, because I'm going to talk specifically about 2 programs that we have in our schools, and that is Leader in Me and 7 Mindsets. With this learner profile, again, those are the skills we expect all students to have. That's the what. How our schools get there, we leave up to our individual schools. I don't tell our principals, you have to implement Leader in Me, our 7 Mindsets, or the Voyage. I leave that up to the community, because I don't believe top-down works in that situation. That has to be a conversation with parents and teachers and students and business partners in each of our schools, and they need to determine how they're going to get there. But the expectation is for every student in Forsyth County to have those skills identified in the learner profile, but how they get there will vary from school to school. Leader in Me was created by Franklin Covey. It is based on Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I'm sure many of you in this room read. It was required reading for me when I was in graduate school. Probably one of the best books I ever read around leadership. And you see the skills that are identified. The first one is, to be proactive, to begin with the end in mind, put first things first, think win-win, seek first to understand and then to be understood, synergize and sharpen the saw. And so when we have schools that are Leader in Me schools, and we have several of them, it's not taught in isolation. It's taught as part of the curriculum. We're teaching math, science, social studies, language arts, but Leader in Me is very much embedded into the curriculum. And you're in a Leader in Me school, and I was sharing this with some folks last night. When I walk into a Leader in Me classroom, and I know you'll appreciate this as business folks, that a student will get up out of their desk. This happens every single time. They'll meet me at the door. They'll shake my hand. They'll look me in the eye. They'll welcome me to their classroom, and then they'll tell me what they're working on. That happens in every Leader in Me classroom, because it's an absolute expectation of our students that we make sure our guests are welcomed into our schools and into our classrooms. And I don't care if it's kindergarten and it's the cutest thing in the world. Trust me, when a 5-year-old comes up and shakes your hand and says, let me show you what I'm working on. And even in that very young age, our kids will keep data notebooks where they're setting goals for themselves. And even, again, as young as kindergarten or first grade, their goal might be to be able to add 2-digit numbers by the end of first semester. That might be their goal. And then they're tracking their progress along the way. And so for us, that's students taking ownership of their education, taking personal responsibility and accountability, which are all skills we want kids to have when they enter the workforce, to be accountable and responsible. Also, in a Leader in Me school, you will see students policing themselves, and I've seen this before, get on the playground and kids are squabbling over what they're going to do. You want to play kickball or you want to play football. And then some kid in a Leader in Me school will intervene and say, why don't we think win-win? Why don't we play kickball for 10 minutes and play football for 10 minutes, and off they go. And it's not the teacher coming in and trying to sort it out and facilitate the difference between the kids. The kids are policing it themselves because the language is very consistent throughout the entire school. So it's not taught in isolation in kindergarten or fifth grade. It's embedded throughout. Another area, again, being proactive or putting first things first. Kid doesn't do their homework, didn't get a project done. The language the teacher is going to use when a student misses an assignment is, did you put first things first? Did you begin with the end in mind? They're always talking that language, and it's very, very consistent, and that really helps the culture and climate of the school. If you look at the 7 mindsets, it's very similar to Leader in Me, and I'm going to talk about why some schools choose Leader in Me and some have chosen 7 mindsets. But the mindsets are everything is possible, passion first, we are connected, 100% accountable, attitude of gratitude, live to give, and the time is now. And a great example of live to give, we've just gone through this awful hurricane season. And in our schools that have 7 mindsets, most of those schools were doing something to contribute and send money or resources to those who are impacted by the hurricanes. And the reason they're doing it is part of the mindset. And the teachers are talking about how important it is to live to give. So it's an example of how 7 mindsets comes to life in the world of our students. I'm not going to touch on the next one. Kevin and Elizabeth are here from Addo. The Voyage is another character education program. It's newer than 7 Mindsets or Leader in Me. We actually have one of our schools in Forsyth County that has adopted the Voyage, but you can look at the 16 character attributes that are taught in the Voyage. It's taught over a 2-year period of time, and again, Kevin and Elizabeth are going to touch more on that. The reason why some of our schools have chosen Mindsets, or the one school chose the Voyage instead of Leader in Me, to be honest, is cost. Leader in Me is fairly expensive. And the reason it's expensive, they provide a lot of training, they provide a consultant that comes into your school, and the price is based on student population. So it's not uncommon for Leader in Me to cost about $60,000 in the first year of implementation. That's very, very expensive for a school. But in our communities, in the ones that have adopted Leader in Me, once it was talked about with parents and business partners, they said, we're going to raise the money and we're going to make it happen. And they did. Now, 7 Mindsets, in contrast to the price of Leader in Me, is about $4,000 or $5,000 a year. You also are provided training, but it's a much less expensive program to offer. And to be honest with you, some of our schools adopted that based on price initially, but now that they've embedded it into their curriculum, they very much believe in it. In fact, our entire North High School cluster of schools, which are 7 schools, all 7 of them are 7 Mindset school because they decided as a community, their parents and business partners, they wanted all schools to be on the same page. And so they're all doing 7 Mindsets there. My point in all this, the program doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter. I know Kevin and Elizabeth might disagree and say that, their program is best, but I'm telling you as a superintendent, I don't think it makes any difference. What matters is the implementation. It must be implemented with fidelity. It must be consistent throughout the school. You must have parental support. You cannot start a program like this and the principal just say we're going to do it. It will not work if that's the approach that's taken. Community has to buy in because you need parental support because you want parents talking that same language at home so it's consistent with the kids. The behavioral expectations for student and staff must be consistent. And what happens, and there's research to prove this, but I can tell you I've seen it myself. In a true Leader in Me, a true 7 Mindsets, or a true Voyage school, a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, attendance is going to go up. And the reason for that is the culture and climate of the school is more conducive to students learning and teachers teaching. It's a happier place. Number two, disciplinary referrals go down. That has been proven over and over again. Why? Because the language is consistent. Kids know how I behave in Mr. Jones's class. The expectations are the same in Mrs. Smith's class. It doesn't matter. Everything is consistent. And when those two things happen, when attendance and also attendance from staff increases too, because they're not dealing with classroom management issues as much as they were before. And it's a happier place for teachers. What's one of the number one reasons teachers leave the profession the first 3 to 5 years? Classroom management. They don't quite know how to handle disruptive children. These programs gives them a consistent vehicle to handle those programs, and because it's consistent, you see the implementation much smoother across. So when those things happen, when attendance goes up for teachers, attendance for students, and behavior goes down, guess what else happens? Achievement goes up, because the kids are in school, because the kids are engaged, the kids are not distracted, they're not disruptive. I mean, it is a win-win situation. I just heard recently Bibb County Schools and the superintendent there, Dr. Curtis Jones, is a good friend of mine who I have a lot of respect for. My understanding is they raised over $2 million for Leader and Me in Bibb County. And kudos to him and the Bibb County community for doing that. And I think if they stay the course and implement that with fidelity, they're going to see results. They're going to see their achievement go up consistently, because the attendance is going to get better and behavior is going to get better as well. So that's what I wanted to share with you around social and emotional learning or character education. The other thing I would add, I think it needs to be measured. CCRPI hasn't quite figured out how to measure it yet. I think in the latest rendition of CCRPI, attendance is going to be part of the equation, which I think is a good thing, because this is directly related to attendance. But I always believe in the adage, you have to inspect what you expect. And I think we absolutely have to have an expectation in our state that character education be embedded into our curriculum, because I think, in my opinion, it's just as important as academic achievement. And that is that our students graduate prepared for college or career, and they have those very important life skills. So with that, if you don't mind, I want to move on quickly. I asked him if I could talk a few minutes about birth to age 5 education, which I'm very passionate about. As I said earlier, and I shared with you some of the data on Forsyth County schools, which we're really proud of, but we are not satisfied with. Yes, we have a 94.4% graduation rate, but that still means students in our school system are not graduating from high school. And to me, that's absolutely unacceptable. You cannot possibly, I mean, there are, I guess, limited exceptions, but you cannot possibly have a career where you can raise a family these days without a high school education at the very least. So it is imperative. Our state graduation rate, I think, is about 80% now, which has improved slightly over the last few years, which is good. We're moving in the right direction. Should we be satisfied with that as a state? Absolutely not. We need every kid to graduate from high school. And research shows that the #1 predictor for academic success is socioeconomic status. And I can tell you firsthand, I've worked in school systems that have had very high free and reduced lunch rates. In Rome City schools, we were about 70%. I now work in a school system with 15% free and reduced lunch rate. Now, 15% sounds like a low number, and it is. However, we have 48,000 kids, and so you do the math on that. We have over 7,000 kids in Forsyth County living in poverty. We have as many kids living in poverty in our school system than other school systems have students. And so it is an issue in Forsyth County schools, although we are only at a 15% free and reduced lunch rate. And so we've been talking as a community, what can we do to improve the opportunities and the success rate of our students? And we know that research shows that one of the predictors of student success is early literacy and numeracy skills. We have students who will come to kindergarten, and I am not kidding when I tell you this, I know it's somewhat shocking, that if you show them the alphabet and you say, where's the letter B? No idea. No letter recognition at all. You put the numbers 1 through 10 in front of them, show me number 5. No idea. 0 literacy, 0 numeracy skills starting kindergarten. The disadvantage those students are at when they come to school that far behind their peers. And guess what? When we start testing them in grade 3, will they perform as well as their peers who come from families who they've been read to every single day, where they start kindergarten ready to learn? Absolutely not. If we stay the course, can we catch them up eventually? Yes, we've proven that we can do that. But they're getting off to such a poor start because they don't have the skills. And I believe strongly that as a community in Forsyth County and as a state in Georgia, we have to invest more in birth to age 5 education. We are partnering with the Forsyth County Library System, and we're also partnering with a local medical provider in Forsyth County to see what we can do to make sure we provide greater resources and opportunities for young families. If you look at the bottom of that second page, one of the initiatives of our library system is 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten initiative, which we are very much supportive of. That doesn't mean 1,000 different books. It just means kids are exposed to 1,000 books. It could be, 7 or 8 books over and over again. The importance that students are being read to. Also, on the next one, you see the other programs. They offer story time programs for 3 age groups, Books and Babies, 0 to 24 months, Toddler Tales for toddlers ages 18 to 36, Preschool Pals for preschoolers. And so we partner with them to make sure our community understands that those programs are available for them. And we're also partnering with Georgia Highlands Medical Services. They provide, they're the medical provider for most of our families that are in that low socioeconomic status group. And they have agreed to partner with us. We've had a couple initial meetings. We're meeting again in December to get to specifics about what we can do in terms of resources and support for young families. Again, and our goal will be that children will come to us at age 5 with the literacy and numeracy skills to be prepared for kindergarten, because we know if they are, the likelihood of them being successful is enhanced greatly. I have always believed students who have less need more. They need more resources, they need more time, and we're going to make sure that happens in Forsyth County. And so the last thing I want to say, and it's a recommendation for your consideration, I just want to take the opportunity to do this. I think one of the ways we can improve public education in Georgia, and this is not a quick fix, this is something that would take a long-term investment, and it would be a case study. But I really believe if we would identify, I said 10 in here, it doesn't matter to me, the 5 or 10 poorest communities in our state, and make some type of grant available to them, and have that grant afford them the opportunity to have the school system, the library system, and medical providers in those counties work together with the sole purpose of making sure children start kindergarten prepared to learn. I think that investment would pay huge dividends in the future. We all know kids who drop out of high school are far more likely to enter the judicial system and be incarcerated than students who stay in school. What does it cost to incarcerate a prisoner in the state of Georgia? I don't know the answer to that, but my guess it's more than $20,000 a year, probably even higher than that. In Forsyth County schools, our per pupil cost is $8,000 a year. Where would you rather spend your money? On educating children or incarcerating prisoners? And in my opinion, if we could focus more, I know we focus a lot on K-12, and rightfully so, but I think if we could really turn our focus to that birth to age 5 group and put some resources in place to help our poorest counties in the state of Georgia, we would see results, and we would see those graduation rates in time in those counties start to increase significantly. Our governor has said over and over again, and he's right, that children must be reading on grade level by the end of grade 3, and I absolutely 100% support him, because research shows if kids are not reading on grade level by the end of grade 3, they are very much at risk of dropping out of school. We know that very early on. So why in the world are we waiting until they're 5 or 6 years old to start providing them with the resources they need to be successful? That needs to happen right out of the gate, right from the time they're born. We need to work with those families. In Forsyth County, a lot of our socioeconomically disadvantaged families are non-native speakers. And so they are somewhat fearful of working with the school system, and are not quick to come to us and ask for support, so we have to go to them. That's why we're partner with a medical services provider, so that we go to them and go to those families, because I think most parents want to be good parents, but oftentimes they just don't know how. And so I think it's our responsibility as a school system and a library system to give them the skills and resources they need to be successful. So with that, I wanted to leave a few minutes. I didn't want to talk to you for 45 minutes. I know how boring that can be. I've been on that side. But I wanted to give you some information and then open it up. Do you have any questions or comments for me in the last 5 or 10 minutes I have?
Well, Doc, you've certainly proven to be the smarter of the two brothers we know anyway. I'll just say that at the outset. I want to ask you a little bit about the last part that you were talking about there, the case studies.
Mhm.
What, unfortunately, in places around the state, and around the country, there are communities that do not have the vision needed to accept something like that and to embark upon that journey. Even if it were to cost them nothing, and, you know, if did the grant paid for everything for it to be done. Unfortunately, there are communities that the vision is not there in order to make that happen. And with that, that means that those children then have no chance, no opportunity, because the vision is lacking. You have any idea of what could be done to change that mindset?
I'll give you an example. In Georgia right now, school systems like Forsyth County that are very successful, we're given a lot of flexibility by the state. We have a strategic waiver in our school system, which, you know, impacts class size and everything else. And I think we've earned the right to do that because we've shown that we're getting results. I think in cases in the state of Georgia, the state has to mandate certain things. And there are places that are underperforming and not meeting the needs of their students. And in those cases, I don't think you give them a choice. I think you mandate that certain things happen. And in this case, you're right. We're not asking for a dollar. We're gonna work together in our community, and we're gonna address this issue in Forsyth County, whether the state wants us to or gives us, it doesn't matter. We're gonna do it. But in some places, sometimes you have to force the issue and you have to mandate it. But, you know, our kids are worth that. I think in some cases you just have to do it. You have to require it. There is no reason, unless I'm wrong, I think I have this, every county in the state of Georgia, I believe, has a library. I think every county in the state of Georgia has medical providers, and every county in the state of Georgia has a school system. There is no reason why those three entities are working in isolation. None. And every county in the state of Georgia has businesses. There's no reasons why they should be left out. Most of them have post-secondary. In Forsyth County, those partnerships are very, very important. Everybody's at the table, and that needs to happen everywhere. And I think in some cases, you just have to mandate that it does happen.
Well, and unfortunately, we find in some cases when we mandate it still doesn't happen. Right. Because there's no one there to mandate it to. No one steps up to the plate in those, right, in some of those cases, and it becomes very frustrating for us. And, you know, we've made attempts to do things to turn those systems around and get rebuffed. But it does bother me, and it does bother this group. We've had several conversations, either as a group or individually, about our concern for the future of communities where there's no current leadership today, that some of the best and brightest that are there today are leaving and never going to come back. And unfortunately, that community forever suffers.
Right. I have not met the new chief turnaround officer that was just hired, but I have read the bio, and I'm really, really impressed with what I've heard early on. And I know there's a lot of excitement in our state with him coming here and that leadership. And I'm hopeful that together with him and the Department of Education that they can team and address these issues and actually send people into those communities to really kind of provide that oversight necessary. So I'm encouraged by that. I hope he does what we think he's going to be able to do.
That's certainly my prayer.
Yeah. Hey, Terry.
First of all, I completely and totally concur about you being the smartest of two brothers.
You're really getting beat up on today, aren't you, Tim? Yeah.
Oh, that's a given. We're going to do it every chance we get.
Yeah.
Let's take a shot while you can.
Right.
This may be a little bit thinking outside the box. One of the first meetings that we had, we were talking about workforce development, talking about the soft skills, people learning, and I made the comment sort of in a sarcastic way. If we get to the kids early enough, they were talking about, well, we've got mentoring programs in high school, which is way too late. And, you know, I said, you ought to start it in pre-K, but I agree with you, it needs to go back to birth. But I said, you know, if you got kids coming home, maybe they'll come home and share these skills with their parents.
Right.
And everybody kind of laughed. But I think it's very true, and I think that's maybe how you solve the problem. You know, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be doing this because the parents would be doing it, but it's not that way anymore. And like you, I grew up in a military family, and believe me, I understand that concept. But have you seen anything at all where maybe you are seeing some sort of residual effect where they're taking it home and the parents are learning and supporting? And the reason I say this, It's almost like when we started talking about nutrition
Yeah.
and childhood obesity. When we started mandating and implementing policies about nutrition, the kids were going home and then talking to their parents to say, no, I don't want that. That's too much sugar. I want apples. I want this. And so you started to see childhood obesity drop, and then at the same time, you started to see adult obesity parallel that a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there any correlation there?
I was smiling at Kevin and Elizabeth because I know they will concur with this. In these 3 programs that I outlined, very much so you see that, because parents, if these are implemented the way they're supposed to be implemented, parents are at the table. They're part of it. And so it's not a school program, it's a life program. And you do see an impact. You do see behaviors changing from parents because the kids are coming home talking the same language to them that they're hearing at school. So absolutely, in these 3 areas, if it's implemented with fidelity, you see behavior change with parents too.
Yeah, I think probably the most, I mean, I enjoyed your entire presentation, but one of the things that you said that really resonated with me is most parents want to be good parents, they just don't know how. So we're
Exactly.
giving them the skills also through this.
Exactly. You know, and there was a time, when I grew up, and nobody had to teach our parents how to be good parents. And I'm sure most of you had the same experience. But we live in a different society today, and I don't think we can just sit back and say, well, that's the role of the parent. Because, yes, maybe it should be, but the reality is it's not happening. And so as a public school system, we're going to take that on. Because we're not just going to sit back and allow students to be disruptive. We're not going to sit back and allow students to just not be successful because they don't want to be. Because that's not good for our society. That's not good for our community, not good for our state, not good for our nation. And so it's incumbent upon us, with everybody in our community, to come together and address this issue right now.
Thank you. Jeff, are you talking about is it a federally qualified health program that takes care of most of?
Yes.
Right. And those are in, I think there's 200 and something federally qualified health. It may not be the primary center, but it has a location across
Right.
our state. And I found them to be, Terry, to be very willing to work together. The other thing is we have public health departments in every county, and the public health nurses have gotten away from doing a lot of things that they used to do. But it seems like, and we also have programs like Babies First and
Right.
that we could partner with.
Yeah,
you.
and there are some HIPAA issues, obviously. However, we're not forcing this. We're going to them and saying to those parents, we're here for you. We will provide resources and support for you, and we're going to them. And we really think, and the staff at Georgia Highlands believes those parents will be very receptive.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about it, Terry. If we did those schools, even if you have a school system that's not interested, I think you could almost bypass them with the federally qualified health centers, public health, the libraries, and then the private corporations, nonprofits that are giving out books already and would like to expand maybe their programs elsewhere. If you've got a school system that's not, willing to come forward in the beginning. And one of the things I found out as an educator, when I went into Forsyth County, because the doctors in a hall would not let my student nurses come to their offices, as soon as we took them somewhere else, all of a sudden the doctors wanted them in hall, wanted them back in their offices. So it's amazing what happens when you go about it that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, I appreciate you bringing these things today. Especially, I want to reiterate about the leaders in me in calling out Bibb County, and I represent part of Bibb, and that is this Leaders in Me program that's being implemented in Bibb County is just really, really huge, and I want members of this committee to know the efforts that business community put in place, the $2 million or $3 million, whatever they raised. My good friend Blake Sullivan headed that up, and they really think this program is critical and essential for changing the dynamics and education in Bibb County, and they bet the bank on it. And I think it's a great, with your program and other schools that are doing these, doing this Leaders in Me program, I think we've got a great opportunity to see the results of this program. And I think it's something that's, if they're right and if you're right, it's a game changer in education. And so I hope we'll stay focused on looking at the results. Bibb County is fixing to implement it K through 12 completely, every school in their whole system. And y'all know the challenges Bibb County's had with their school system in a few years. It is in dire need, and we got a great superintendent there, Dr. Jones, who's turned things around in the last few years before now. But with this Leaders in Me, Blake and the business community and the money they've raised to implement it, they started in a few schools prior, and now they think so much of it that they're doing it system-wide. So I hope we're right on what the results are going to be, and it'll be very exciting if we do. So and I hope we can emulate, if it is successful as y'all say, I hope we can be able to afford to emulate it across our state.
Well, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier, and I believe in Leader in Me, trust me. But again, I don't think it's about the program, it's about the implementation and the fidelity of the program. Chris Clark, who's the president of the Georgia Chamber, is a huge champion of Leader in Me. He is because his son went to a Leader in Me school in Fayette County, and he saw firsthand what that program did for his own child. And you see chambers all over the state and all over the nation, quite honest with you, that are embracing in Leader in Me and encouraging business partners to financially support schools and school systems that are wanting to champion that cause. But again, Elizabeth and Jay are going to present their program. It's outstanding too, but it's about fidelity and intentionality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just find this so intellectually stimulating, but as an educator, you believe in local control. We get beat up all the time about mandating this and mandating that, and I'm trying to find the balance
Right.
because you can't leave a child behind.
Right.
How do you intellectually find that balance justified to me taking away someone's because I'm
Yeah.
the state? And B to that is, because I understand the concept of people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And I see that every single day. But there's a part of me that sits there and goes, in the world of kingdom building, this is our focus. But as a conservative, if I give you this, I know what'll happen. You'll come back and say, I just need this and more funding, and then this, and then this. And then I feel like, and my constituents feel like, some of my parental choices are taken away.
Yeah.
Address that kind of,
Yeah.
it's out there.
To your initial comment, when you talked about, giving flexibility to some and mandating to others, are you a dad? Are you a dad? Okay. Do you have more than one child?
Yes.
Well, they're not the same. I mean, I'll use that analogy. I mean, sometimes with our own kids, we give them lots of freedom because they've earned the right. They've proven that they're responsible. They're proven they're accountable. They're proven that they are going to do what they said they were going to do. So we kind of give them a lot of rope, a lot of flexibility. Then sometimes we have kids, we really have to rein in because they're not responsible and they're not accountable. They're not doing what they said they were going to do. And in our own families with our own children, we're a little tougher on them. We're a little tighter with them. And I think the same thing applies in public education. We all receive dollars from the state of Georgia. And so there's an accountability there and a responsibility there. And I accept that. I take that personally. But if we have systems that, as a state, you don't feel like that they are, I think we have to be tougher, quite honestly, on those systems and demand more and provide more oversight. I go back to the chief turnaround officer again. I'm hopeful that that will do that in some of those communities. But in other school systems, and we're not the only one, but there are a lot of school systems in Georgia that are doing a great job. I think as a legislature, you need to allow them tremendous flexibility to be creative and innovative to meet the needs of their kids because they're getting it done. And nothing empowers a community more than deciding, charting their own course. And I go back to the learner profile. This wasn't developed by me. This was truly developed by our community with lots of stakeholders, but it's ours. We own it. We all own it. And so that accountability and responsibility is there because we created that document. And so, I think we should be given great flexibility. In other cases, I don't think they should be given very much at all, to be honest with you.
And the second part of that, which was you give someone this much. I mean, every day, all of us hear from the Georgia School Board Association, the GAEs,
Yeah.
and the pages that are concerned about letting government put their nose under their tent in this regard. How do we address that? Do you talk to your colleagues about giving the state flexibility from the School Board Association? And
Yeah, and the whole issue around funding and finances is complicated. I said earlier, children who have less need more. I really do believe that. I think federal dollars, title dollars are intended for that purpose, to make sure those kids have the resources and support. But I will tell you, in Forsyth County, we have the lowest per pupil cost in Metro Atlanta, and we have the highest achievement in Metro Atlanta. So it's not always about dollars. That's the bottom line. And I know some of my colleagues in state might shudder when they hear me say but that's reality. We are very financially efficient. We're the only system in the state of Georgia for 2 years in a row to get a 5-star financial rating from the Department of Education. We're really proud of that fact because it takes all those metrics into consideration, per pupil cost and student achievement. But I don't dismiss the funding piece. I'm not saying that. I'm saying kids, especially young children, early on, they need more resources, more support. They need more one-on-one time. As they get older, I think that lessens. And so it's really needs-based, but it's not always about money, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Does that answer your question? I don't know if
I was just talking about the cooperation from the organizations, because in Forsyth County,
Right.
your demographics and what your millage rate brings in versus
Right.
a Terrell County or Webster's
Right.
night and day. And I wasn't really addressing the funding issue
Right.
as much as I was the organizations, that when we try to have these conversations, give us immediate pushback. Don't want to give us any leeway at all. Admit that there's problems, but never offer solutions. Want to be part of the discussion, but never help us write the legislation almost.
Yeah.
And so I'm just asking, how do we get them involved to sit there and go, we admit that these problems that you've outlined and done a wonderful job with exist, and how do we create a partnership with those organizations?
I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but I'll tell you, as a superintendent, when anybody comes to my office with a problem, they'd better have some solutions, or I'm going to dismiss them immediately, because I'm not there to solve everybody's problem. I want them to think through that issue and those challenges, and then we can have that conversation. I don't think we should be bringing problems to you without proposed solutions and also an analysis about what those solutions means in terms of finances.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
All right, got time for one more if there is one. Well, Doc, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the presentation this morning and opening our eyes to a few additional things that we may not have thought about as well. So appreciate what you're doing there in Forsyth County, and we're not too far from you in Barrett County where I live, and you certainly keep our attention focused on y'all a good bit too, because admiring a lot of what's happening there.
Thank you. Well, let me close by saying something you might not hear very often, or certainly not often enough. Thank you for serving. We need your service. It's so important that people have the willingness to run for the legislature and represent our state and our community. I know it's a lot of work. You're probably overworked and underpaid, but know that as a superintendent, I appreciate and respect what you do every single day. And thank you for supporting public education. 95% of the kids in the state of Georgia go to public schools. And so, we need your support. And when I say support, I'm not just talking financial. I'm talking support of all of our children. Thanks for the opportunity today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I think Jeff has already introduced our next set of presenters, and we're going to hear from Kevin Scott and Elizabeth Jay, and who are going to talk about the Voyage program, which is a similar program to those that Jeff just talked about, and they're going to tell us a little bit about theirs too.
Sorry about that. I didn't want us to have to move back and forth behind there for a minute. We are real excited to be here. My name's Kevin Scott. We love Dr. Bearden and the work that he's doing in Forsyth County. Our organization is called ADDO. ADDO is the Latin word for inspire, and we, step back here. Away from the podium? Okay. So we really work to inspire leadership with organizations across the state. I want to give a little bit of context before we dive in about how I kind of had my perspective shifted around this conversation of of students in the state of Georgia. And I'll just be honest with you. I grew up in Cobb County, went to Cobb County schools. I feel like in a lot of ways had lived in a bubble. My dad was a City of Marietta fireman for 30 years. And I went to the University of Georgia, and when I got there, there's 1,000,001 organizations you can get involved with at UGA. It doesn't matter what your political beliefs are, what your faith background is, what sports you like. You can find some organization to get involved with. And my friend wanted me to get involved with a charity that helps kids with HIV and AIDS. And it wasn't something that I really understood or knew a lot about, but my friend was a good salesman. He convinced me because he said, well, the football coaches are involved, Vince Dooley's involved, you get to hang out with Coach Dooley. And then he also told me that there were about 1,000 UGA college students involved, and 80% of them were girls. So, sold. I mean, I'm not telling you my motives were pure, but I signed up to help kids with AIDS because I wanted to hang out with Vince Dooley and young college girls. So my wife knows this now, so that was just at the time. Here's what I found out. Georgia has 12,000 kids in our state infected with or affected by HIV and AIDS. We actually have the second highest rate of pediatric AIDS in the nation. New York, number 1, Georgia, number 2. The kids we worked with, 90% of them came from family incomes of $10,000 or less a year. So you've got a physical challenge, you have a social stigma, and then in addition to all of these issues, you've got just a poverty, a socioeconomic challenge. And so we did 2 things for them. We did a mentoring program, so think kind of big brother, big sister, and we did one-day special events. And my favorite event we ever did, we turned Sanford Stadium in Athens into a giant movie theater. We brought kids from across the state, literally all over the state. They bussed up, and they got to watch The Incredibles on the Jumbotron in Sanford Stadium. And we thought they were going to be pumped. They were on the field, between the hedges, 92,000-person stadium. Here's what we learned. Most of them didn't care about the movie. They didn't care about Sanford Stadium. They were excited to be on a college campus and have a college student to hang out with that day, somebody to call a friend. The little girl I worked with, she was 6 years old, and she was most excited about free Chick-fil-A that was coming at the end of the movie. That's what she talked about the whole time. Chick-fil-A's my favorite. So when the food got there, we got her the very first sandwich, brought it over, cut it in half. She inhaled the first half of it, and then she wrapped the other half back up. And I was like, this is what you've talked about all day. Don't you want to finish the rest of the sandwich? And this was 10 years ago, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, I really do, but I want to save it for my grandmother at home who never gets to have Chick-fil-A either. And 50% of the kids we worked with had lost one parent. This little girl lost both, lived at home with her grandmother. And here's, I think, for the first time in my life, my perspective was broadened. I understood that there are a lot of kids across this state that their heart's in the right place. They've got the potential. They need somebody to give them the opportunities to really live. In fact, and this is not a knock on any of the professors at University of Georgia, but the greatest leadership lesson I learned wasn't in a classroom. It was from that girl who understood that real leadership is leveraging the resources you have to help other people. And that's something that we're passionate about in all the programs we do. We kind of work, when we look at leadership, in this kind of cradle to career idea. And I'm going to let Elizabeth share a little bit about it with you.
Yeah, so I think we are passionate about not just developing at an executive level, or even like Dr. Bearden talked about in elementary schools, but everything in between. And if we can create this leadership continuum, that we are setting up students for success beyond high school graduation and into the workforce, and then helping to continue to develop them. So what that looks like for us is starting with elementary school with character building. We're going to talk about this a bit more today. Dr. Bearden mentioned it a little bit. And then it goes all the way up to workforce development, and this is leader development. We do this through several different programs. If we look at the workforce side of it, we have a program called Ask It. This is to help frontline team members, places like we work with Chick-fil-A's or McDonald's, different grocers around Georgia, to feel prepared and passionate and purposeful about their work, but also about their lives. And so helping them to find that, whether they, no matter what their area of how they work in those stores or restaurants. We also do it, though, at a corporate level with lots of executives. We kind of work on the spectrum of workforce. Then if we look at college, we have a program, this is not in Georgia, but a program at Auburn University helping to develop leaders, freshman leaders. We actually, just a couple of weeks ago, launched that with about 1,000 students at Auburn. Jeff Foxworthy was the keynote speaker and helped to inspire them there. If we come down to high school, building these leadership skills, we have a program in partnership with Chick-fil-A called Chick-fil-A Leader Academy that's nationwide, but it started here in Georgia in 3 schools, grew and continued to grow, again, nationwide. We have a program with the Atlanta Braves Leadership Institute, and so helping to build those leadership skills in high school that prepares them to go into the workforce. We're going to talk a lot today about our elementary school program, The Voyage. Like Dr. Bearden mentioned, there's several programs out there, but we're excited about how it has impacted even in Forsyth County, other counties across the state. And while all of these programs, we're seeing a lot of impact and beneficial for those that are part of them, really, we don't just create these initiatives and put them in the hands of schools or organizations, but we want to help tell these positive stories that are coming out of wherever the program is. And so one example of that, the Georgia Vision Project, some of you may be familiar with, they came to us and said, help us tell the positive stories of what's happening in Georgia public education. And so we want to show you one example of that story, and then we'll dive into the voyage a little bit.
Somebody I remember from Georgia Public School would be my first coach, would be Coach Friday. Man, we had some awesome times. I was part of the jump rope club, jumping club. I was a little dribbler. One time we even took a field trip to Georgia Tech, and during halftime, we got to do a little performance. But yeah, gym time with Coach Friday really made a big impact on my life. I think it's important to never forget where you're from. My journey started here. This is kindergarten through 5th grade. I was here. I was in this exact library, going through the National Scholastic Book Fairs. And, so I've got these flashbacks as soon as I think always. I think that's very important for me to come back here and share that and show these kids now I'm no different. I walk the same hallways, use the same bathrooms. Some of my teachers here,
and I think that speaks for itself. But yeah, I think if you dream big and there's no barrier to what you can do.
You guys familiar with the Vision Project? Now a part of the Georgia School Board Association. So I know some were talking about that, but doing some incredible things. I want to anchor on this concept for a second. So probably our largest partner is Chick-fil-A. As Elizabeth mentioned, we started a program with them in 3 schools in Georgia. It's now in 700 high schools in 35 states. And a lot of people ask, why is a fast food chicken company involved in education? And it's one of the things that we have learned from them as a business that I think is important for us as in our conversation today. What they understand is, so if we're deciding where we want to move with our families, one of the most important factors, especially if you're a family with kids or thinking about having kids, is the quality of the public schools in that area. Home values, in large part, are determined by how good the schools are in that area. And so Chick-fil-A really takes the long view of leadership, and they say, if we can make an investment in our public schools, then as those public schools improve, more people want to live and work in our community. And if more people want to live and work in our community, guess what? More people want to buy chicken from us. And so it's a longer cycle. It's much longer than just trying to do a new ad campaign. But I think this is something that our state, and we'll talk about this at the end, is something that we've really got to elevate the conversation on. We spend a lot of time talking about transportation as it relates to economic development. But if we can improve the schools in our area, what it ends up creating is a much better place. We talk a lot about being the best place to do business, but it a lot of times starts with the best place to educate and raise kids. Just a few things that make our programs a little bit unique and different, and I would echo 100% what Dr. Bearden said about, does the program matter or the adoption and implementation? I think the adoption and implementation matters a lot more, but a few things that are important. Number one, we've got to meet students where they are with what is interesting to them. A great challenge with a lot of programs in our state that come down from the top is they are well-intentioned, but they are unengaging to students. They are boring. I mean, we're just gonna be real with you. I joined a charity to help kids with AIDS because of Coach Dooley and girls. It wasn't because somebody was handing out pamphlets telling me about the challenges with HIV and AIDS. If we are going to meet this generation, we've got to have content that reaches them where they are. The second thing we've got to do is create an environment that gives students opportunity to learn by doing. Harvard Business School, for the first time 2 years ago, decided not only are they going to do case studies, but they're going to give students a chunk of money and make them go start a business to see how they actually put into practice what they're learning. I want you to think about this concept. We talk about leadership students. They sit in a classroom and they learn something about visionary leadership or teamwork. And then they walk into math class. No problem in math class. But most students, unless they're on the football team or they're in the student government, most students never have an outlet to apply what they've learned. And so what we have students do from beginning in kindergarten all the way through is what they're learning, they have outlets to apply and they're challenged to put those into practice. And then the last thing is, you know, for us and what drives us, there's a traditional element. There are things that we believe are timeless truths and they're practical principles, but we've got to be presenting those in a relevant way. I want you to think about this challenge. We have to create a high school leadership program that is comfortable, that is acceptable to Chick-fil-A executives in Atlanta. Yet it's got to be relevant in a way that reaches a student in inner city Chicago or in rural Georgia. And so we've got to be able to do something that teaches those truths in a way that's relevant. I think far too often we've said, we're either just going to teach timeless truths in a boring way, or we're going to abandon the values that we've held true for a long time for the sake of being relevant. And I actually believe we can do both. So we're going to talk about this for just a few minutes, and then we'll show you another video and take questions. Here's what I love about this elementary school program, The Voyage. And the way that we got into an elementary school program was we were called by Fayette County for schools that wanted Leader in Me and could not afford it. That was the situation. They wanted a program, they couldn't find a way to access it. They said, what could we create? And Dr. Bearden nailed it because he said you talk about the social side and you talk about school culture and you talk about character ed and they kind of get lumped into one area. When schools are saying they want a character education program, they're actually saying two different things. Some of them want character education that students see, and some of them what they actually want is programs for their teachers that help them better teach character. And so what's fascinating about this program, not exclusive to us, is that it teaches character to elementary school students, but we're actually developing the teachers from a professional development standpoint as well. So being able to hit at both ends of the spectrum. we, every elementary school in Dawson County and Lumpkin County are doing this program. And it was really cool this year to be at a kickoff with every single elementary school educator in both of those counties and be able to talk about not only what they're going to be teaching students, but how those educators could develop in their skill set as well. So, we want to show you a video, one example of the types of content that a teacher would see. So this is not, I know some of you really want to watch the animated curriculum for elementary school students. You can see that later, but this is what a teacher will see. This is a teacher in Houston County who was Georgia Teacher of the Year a couple years ago. Maybe.
Beyond the story.
All right, we're going to skip it. We're going to come back to it. I don't want y'all to have to suffer through it going in and out like that. So we'll send that out or make it available. Tim will make it available to you guys afterwards. So in addition to student content, they also see things for educators as well.
Yeah, so to give a little bit of context of what the program actually is, and Kevin talked a lot about the need to engage students and teachers with relevant content, and so when you see that video, you'll see that it's Amanda's incredibly engaging. She's able to connect with teachers in a very unique way that really I couldn't do, or somebody else that's outside of their industry and what they do every day in the classroom. And Amanda's able to connect. And so what we do as students to do that, there's a weekly character lesson that happens in the classroom, in every single classroom. So there are thousands of students going through this year, and they're seeing this every single week, so that it's continued to be reinforced. And it starts with an engaging activity. This is an activity from a cooperation lesson. They do a puzzle that not only encourages them to learn, well, what's a definition of cooperation, but now I need to actually learn how to do this with my classmates. And so that's where we connect with them with something that's interesting to them. And then we show them an animated storyline that helps students connect these characters that they see in the story with the concepts that they're learning. And really, it's a quick little video each week, but it creates a conversation also for the principal. If a student's walking down the hall, the principal knows what that student is working on, and they can say, hey, what did you think about this story this morning, and how Captain Fitzy demonstrated honesty or respect? It creates a conversation throughout the entire school, and that was something else that Dr. Bearden did a great job of emphasizing, that if we can create a common language throughout the entire school, that really is what's transformational for students. And coming out of that storyline, there's plenty lessons that empower action, like Kevin talked about. If they just sit in the classroom and learn the definition of respect or cooperation or perseverance, that only goes so far. We want to give them an outlet to actually put this into practice. And so from week to week between lessons, there's a way, kind of a challenge and a charge for them to do that. So this is what students see, but then like he talked about, schools are asking for not just a student-facing character curriculum, but also how do we develop our staff and our teachers. And so there's a paralleling unit-based learnings for educators as well. And so number one, we make it easy for them to access everything. We don't want something like a website or unable to make copies of the curriculum to prohibit them from teaching it. But then along with each unit, there's a development video. And really, we want this to help them develop professionally and think about as a team at the school, how are we growing in these ways, but also personally. And so a lot of these videos have examples of what does this look like at school when we're in our grade level meeting, but then also what does this look like outside of school. If we can help develop educators in both of those areas, that's beneficial. It comes back to benefit the students and the community as as well.
Well, just quickly, I want you to think what that's like. So, a third grade teacher is talking about cooperation to her third grade students. And then a fellow teacher comes on to a screen at the staff meeting and says, I know that you believe that cooperation is important for your students. But guess what? As adults, it's also important. What would it look like in your school if among your grade level we fostered more cooperation? What if the teacher who was really great at the math lesson spent time cooperating and investing with other teachers, helping them develop their skills? So it's kind of taking what seems like a very elementary concept and elevating it to a conversation at a professional level, which really helps that school be on the same page.
Yeah, and then the final piece of how we're helping educators out is that there's a parent connection that happens. And so we've talked about this a lot already this morning. I got a lot of these conversations at home growing up, but a lot of these students are not getting that. And so we want to help equip parents with a resource to reinforce this at home. So it may be something as simple as, if we're talking about cooperation, think about baking cookies at home and the whole family has to cooperate to get the right ingredients and the recipe. How can there be an activity at home that cultivates this conversation outside of the walls of the school? And I think we really have seen, somebody was talking earlier about how our character education programs in the classroom, creating a ripple effect into the homes, and that's something that we have seen a lot. Counselors will come and say, parents are asking about how they can continue these conversations at the dinner table or with other activities that are going on in their families. I think we've got one more video. We'll see if it...
All right, we won't talk about broadband right now. Let's just go back. I want to kind of, for the sake of time, I want to recap. I want to take some questions, and didn't just after the questions, one more thing to share with you guys. Here, we have individuals ask us a lot, how can we get involved? And to be frank with you, we spend a lot more time talking to business leaders than legislators, but these are some of the themes that we talk about over and over. And the first one applies specifically to you guys, and maybe not directly, but leveraging your influence. One, reducing the regulation for local school systems. I know we talked about this, but we had an issue this year. I know this is recorded. We had an issue in Houston County where they wanted a program. The school system wanted it. This was not their problem. They wanted to implement our program. And the state Board of Education was telling them what they were allowed, the Department of Education, what they could do with their funds, and basically said, this program is too new and too innovative. It doesn't have the long trail of research we need. So instead of getting a program that would have impacted their students, they had to go with an older, irrelevant, but research-validated program. In business, everybody wants the newest, most innovative thing. In education, our government doesn't incentivize new and innovative. We incentivize old, tried and true, and often irrelevant programs. And it really is hurting the students who most need something different for them. And so this was a conversation we had with the State Board of Education. Second, Board of Education. Incentivizing the investment in schools and education initiatives, it goes back to exactly what you're talking about in Bibb County. And it's not, when I say incentivize, it's not even just dollars, but how do we help elevate this conversation so that the individuals and the communities and the businesses that are doing things to help our schools, that they are brought up, that they are recognized in the same way as businesses that are donating and being involved in other areas. I think the third thing is connecting the education conversation to economic development. I know you guys do that here, but that's a big issue. When I talk to my friends that work at the Georgia Transportation Alliance, and I believe they are very, very effective at telling businesses how important solving the transportation issue is to economic development in our state. And because of that, they're getting tremendous amounts of funds from businesses passionate about it. And there is nowhere near that level of funding coming from those businesses in the education environment. It's just not happening. And so that's not a government solution, but it's an individual influencer elevating those conversations. And the last one, and this is specifically for those of you who represent a rural area. It's raising the awareness of opportunities. One of the biggest challenges we find is that certain school systems are not having certain programs, not because they can't afford them, but because they don't know about them. And I'm just gonna, we sat Tuesday with Dr. Wilbanks in Gwinnett County. And it's, as somebody who's trying to get a program into schools, it makes sense to sit with a superintendent who has 80 elementary schools. We cannot feasibly, it does not make economic sense for our organization to go and sit with every superintendent across the state. So the big school systems are going to get the most, they're going to hear the most, they're going to have the most opportunities. One of the most amazing things that a legislator can do in their area, because you're an influencer in your community, is go back to a couple elementary schools and say, hey, here's some things I've learned. You should reach out to these people. And I'm not just talking about us, but as you learn things, if you can be connecting the dots in your school systems, them not knowing about opportunities often is as big, if not more of an obstacle to them having them as funding is. And we're finding that across the board. So with that, why don't we've got about 15 minutes left. I'd love to stop and take some questions before we wrap.
We were talking about having 80 elementary schools. We have one primary, one elementary, one middle, and one high school. And about half, our whole total student population is about half of what Dr. Bearden's free and reduced is. Is it possible, and y'all's thing starts from cradle to career, is it possible for, say, the elementary school in our system to take on its own, since we have a enthusiastic principal at the elementary school, and discount the rest of them if they don't want to do it? Is it possible to do that?
Absolutely. So each of these programs operate individually, so they can happen on their own. We were in Rabun County having a conference. They are in the same boat you're in. They have a primary, an elementary, one middle, and one high school. And so talking to them and about just that program. Transparently, we're really excited about this elementary school piece because it doesn't need the funding is more open. Our high school program is free for a school, but you gotta have a local Chick-fil-A in the area to do it, which disqualifies a lot of places in our state. It's why we strategically decided with an elementary school program to not have a corporate partner, because then it doesn't limit our ability to serve a broader constituency. So absolutely, an elementary school and a primary school could do just that one program. Thank you.
I have a question. Did I understand you to say it was free in the high school if you had a Chick-fil-A
Yes, ma'am.
in your district? Okay,
Yes,
I just
ma'am.
want to.
They have, Chick-fil-A has provided the funding to give that away to schools.
Back to that question about the Chick-fil-A funding, so if you've got a rural county that obviously doesn't have a Chick-fil-A, do you have any of those schools that are coming up with the funds to purchase the program?
Just being honest with you, the high school program it is a Chick-fil-A branded program, and it is not, that is why we made the elementary school decision we did, because we cannot put a high school program where there is not a Chick-fil-A funding. It was designed and created around a local store plugging in and helping support that school. We needed to create a program that didn't have that obstacle, and that's why the elementary school program does not have one corporate partner. Although there have been corporate partners who paid for it in their area, they just don't have the branding on it.
So what is the price? Is it based on the number of students?
Yeah, so the price of the elementary school program is $7 per student per year. So the average elementary school in Georgia has about 550 students. So you're talking 3,500 to 4,000 for an elementary school, which, again, the reason we were asked to create this was Fayette County has 14 elementary schools. 4 of those schools have leader in me. I've never met a school that has leader in me that would get rid of it. It's an incredible, it is life-changing program. But for some schools and some systems, there is just no way they're going to get to that. And it really was kind of the haves and the have-nots. It was this program at this level and everything else that was honestly kind of garbage out there. And so we had to create something that was accessible and affordable, but was still having the same kind of transformational results.
In Houston, you said the state superintendent school board told them they couldn't use it. Was that just because they were going to pay for it with school funds?
It was, and most of our schools, most are paid for by school funds. They had a specific issue, and I'm not probably well versed enough, they had an issue with the state where they needed, I think they had disproportionate investments in certain schools and needed to help. And so they identified this as a program that could help some of their schools that were not having the same level of funding. And so it was their money that they wanted to spend on this program, and the DOE said no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your presentations, really good. On your slide there, number 3, connected educational conversations to economic development. Can you kind of just give us some suggestions on how to connect that conversation, how to get that conversation started?
Yeah, I know in some rural areas, so one, we have, I know there are certain businesses that are passionate about this. One of the ones we've been getting connected to is Dollar General. It's more in the rural areas. They're starting to focus on economic development, or on this education piece. What I understand is that there are these large organizations in Atlanta, and we could probably stand here and name some of these businesses that are based in Atlanta, but they have a lot of business throughout the state, and they are trying to do whatever, to make investments that really raise the status of this state as a whole. But a disproportionate amount of their dollars are going to the conversation on transportation, which is absolutely important and essential. But the percentage of dollars they're giving to education is so minuscule. But it really, when you look at other businesses my wife is from Telfair County. And when Telfair County or Dodge County or these counties are trying to bring in businesses, one of the reasons a lot of their families don't want to move there is the quality of education in that area. And so, and I think a lot of these businesses need other businesses in the state to be thriving, and so if we can help elevate that conversation and incentivize business investment in education, not only do we get the funding, but quite frankly, we get the quality and the innovation that the business world has that education does not. And that's, you would be amazed when we walk into a classroom, just because our stuff doesn't look like it's out of 1986. It's so refreshing because the quality and caliber of stuff that they're getting in schools is honestly embarrassing and subpar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. I live in very, very rural Georgia in Washington County, and I also have Hancock County and Glasgow County in my district. When you talk about number 4, raise awareness of opportunities among rural schools, when we go back to our communities, is there a website or anything that we can go to show our principals what you have here?
Yeah, the best, so this program is called The Voyage for Schools. So TheVoyagefor schools.com. That's the best one here. You know, this is what we find. Elizabeth earlier this week was in Savannah at the Georgia Association of Elementary School Principals. And there are these great elementary school principals. I think there's about 1,300 elementary schools across the state, and about 100 elementary school principals were in attendance, which means there's 12, and what we're finding is a disproportionate amount are coming from Metro Atlanta or Augusta or Macon or they're not coming from the other areas. Even when we're at conferences where Georgia school superintendents are in attendance, a lot of times it's the smallest counties with the least access that are not getting to those events. And those events are the greatest way for them to see the whole spectrum of options out there. So that's the best way. But you know, I don't know if there's ways that as you guys have access to things, you can say, hey, I'm going to take my 2 superintendents with me to the Capitol to meet some people. We're just finding they struggle in that area.
Patty?
Repeat that, please. You said there's 1,300 elementary schools in the state, and at that convention, only 100 elementary school principals were present?
Correct.
And it's put on by
Gail, Georgia Association of Elementary or Educational Leaders.
And it is the elementary school conference in the state. It's where they have the greatest access to new innovative programs, information about what's happening.
It's on Monday. That's a good question. There are some conferences that happen in the summertime. The principal conference happens this time of year. I think that's definitely something that would help. A lot of principals have the freedom to attend the conferences like this. So, but I think to Kevin's point, just a lot of the areas that were represented are the bigger areas like Metro Atlanta or Macon or Savannah.
So you're saying Georgia Department of Education does not provide any type of education material or information for our superintendents, principals, school systems along these lines?
I don't know what all they provide, to be frank with you. I'm not
I don't
sure.
either.
Jason?
Have you tried reaching out to some of the RESAs around the state?
We have, and I'm not going to call it, there is a disparity among RESAs. So we are, for example, when you hear, I want you to hear this clearly though, when you hear we're in Dawson and Lumpkin, we're having conversations at Raven, it's because Justin Old and Pioneer RESA is serving their communities in an unbelievable way. And those schools in that area look to that RESA to bring them opportunities like this. And there are a few others that are doing that, and then there are others that if you call, you can't get on their calendar to come even share this with their groups. And so that's, and I know the disparity among RESAs frustrates them because as you guys are debating funding issues, there are some that would want to cut RESAs, but I know that in certain areas, those RESAs are so essential to their success, they're getting opportunities that they would otherwise not get. I think the challenge is raising some of those others up to that level.
Well, the RESAs in my area, there's 2 different RESAs in my district, but they both do a great job and they've got real enormous support from those school superintendents. So
that's awesome.
Coastal Plains and Okefenokee.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, my. All right, our next presenter this morning is going to be talking about career pathways and what the Department of Education is doing. Dwayne Hobbs is the Work-Based Learning Manager for the Department of Education and been in that role for some time and probably knows this area about as good as anyone in the state. And Dwayne, we're glad to have you with us today and look forward to hearing what you got to say.
Thank you, Representative England. And the first thing I'd like to say is I'm glad I don't have any video in my presentation. And also, I'd be remiss if I started without introducing my boss, who's president of this room, Dr. Barbara Wall, sitting in the back table. Dr. Wall is the state CTA director. I've worked for about 6 different directors during the time I've been in the Department of Education already. She's a very good director, and she directs me all the time and keeps me on track. So last time she directed me to make a few changes on my PowerPoint, and I highlighted a couple of success stories, which I'm really excited about. It was a good move because I wish I had paid attention to the agenda better and noticed that Jeff was one of the first presenters. I wish I'd put one of his students in because he has a very great work-based learning program from South County. And we literally have thousands, I mean literally, I say thousands, I'm not exaggerating, of these success stories. I don't tell you about 2 or 3 as they go along. But we have lots of success in our work-based learning program with Tim's students and for South, as well as probably most of the other systems in the room. Have lots of students who are achieving success in our work-based learning program. So, a couple of things. First of all, Tim talked about the graduation rate, being for South County. We achieve the same graduation rate for our students that take the CTA classes in high school as for South County as for all of our students. You can see from the slide, the number of students, quite a significant number of students who are in our CTA classes statewide. The pie chart on the left shows you that about 2/3 of our program work-based learning is the other categories I'll introduce to you in a moment. About 1/3 is our apprenticeship piece in blue. On the right, you can see the kind of size and scope of our program. The total bar there is the number of students in the 350,000 range of students who take CTA classes in high school. But the little orange part at the top is just the percentage of those that are in work-based learning. So it is a program that only serves a small percentage of our students. In our schools, statewide, we have a very large growth in the past last year. It doesn't look real significant just on the number of students, 19,598. But the number of credits that they earned was a significant jump for us, which means more students are doing more than one period a day. About 16% of our students in work-based learning are students who are at risk of dropping out, disadvantaged, or special needs in some way. And one of my success stories I'll show you later is a student who definitely, absolutely would have been dropped out of school, would not have finished school had it not been for the work-based learning program. I talked about credits that students earn. You can see we've been awarding somewhere in the 20,000 or 20,000 credits in work-based learning every year. This past year, they jumped 33,444 units. Probably the key reason for that is CCRPI recognizes the percentage of graduates the school system has that is in work-based learning. And I think it's been pushed and emphasized a little bit more by some school systems, so thus the big jump. We've been doing work-based learning in Georgia for a long time. There's a long history as far back as education. Actually, one of the first areas of education in Georgia outside before academic areas was agricultural education. Agricultural education is always focused on moving students from the school to the workplace. And there's been various forms of cooperative education, co-op, and intern programs throughout the history of Georgia. In the 70s, 80s, we had a big boom of converting our schools to comprehensive high schools and a large increase in vocational education programs in the state. We had a great expansion of different types of work-based learning programs. All of them were just attached to particular curriculum areas. We had one in specific that was just a work-based learning program by itself, which was called Diversified Cooperative Training, or DCT. In '94, we had a law passed that created our youth apprenticeship program. And in '04, we expanded that. It was just for certain centers around the state. We expanded that to every system in the state has the opportunity to apply for funding in the youth apprenticeship program. In 2006, we did a major reorganization of work-based learning in the state. And we created a model where we have one school-wide work-based learning coordinator per school who serves all students in all CCA areas instead of just having certain programs that had available students and some that did not. The 12-month program in Carrollton and the South Flyer was an example of variation of our work-based learning program. Someone may be familiar with that. In 2015, we created our first MOU with Great Promise Partnership, which is a category of our work-based learning program, and still have continued that work and have a current MOU with them to work with a number of our school systems. In 2016, the German Apprenticeship Program you may have heard about, which is a variation of our youth apprenticeship program, which was a model created by the career academies, started at the Central Education Center and Swiss model with the Career Academy, now expanding to Newton County Career Academy and some other around the state are looking at that. And this past year, most recent thing we've done in work-based learning is working with that Career Academy organization to apply for a WESEP, work education career program. Can't remember the acronym, but basically it's a program that the federal government has that each state can apply for, which will allow students at as early age as 15, which currently would not be allowed under the law, to be involved in work-based learning programs. The German model does involve students at a young age. So we've been doing work-based learning for a long time. We've gone through a lot of revisions, a lot of things have evolved as we've gone through the program. So work-based learning, showing the center of this model, the point of this is it cannot be just a standalone program that exists. These other areas surrounding it are the great things that happen in our CPA programs and our high schools. Without those things, the program cannot exist or flourish. We have to have things like career awareness, career exploration activities. We have to have connecting activities like active advisory committees. We have to have instruction-related activities to teach the kids the specific skills that they need to be successful in the workplace, and particularly what you've heard about so much this morning, we use the term employability skills. Call it soft skills, call it life skills, call it character building, call it whatever we want to call it. But some of those things are things that have to happen in the home, in the community, culture that people grow up in, but there's a sector of it that schools can have an effect on, and we categorize that as employability skills. That's a big piece of what we do. And so what you focused on so far this morning is a major emphasis of our work-based learning program. And we know that one of the best ways to teach kids employability skills and to solve that gap that exists out there is through our work-based learning program, and that's what we focus on every year. We have 398 coordinators statewide, 144 of those are youth apprenticeship coordinators. And practically every school in the state has a work-based learning coordinator. And we work really hard at trying to get this model implemented everywhere we can. This is the key component of how our program is structured. Number one, we have to identify students who do have a career goal. As you know, some students don't know yet what they want to do. You pick the average senior out of high school and say, what are you going to do when you graduate? Number one answer is what? I don't know. And number two answer is go to college. And then if you say, well, you know, college is not a career, that's just another step. What are you going to actually do? Well, I'm back, I don't know again. So we're looking for that small sector of students who do have a career goal, have taken the curriculum-related coursework so we can put them in a related job and link those three together. So the whole idea is a linkage between what I want to be, what I'm studying and learning about, and what can I do in a real-life job situation out there and apply those skills. Here's the basic categories we work with: our youth apprenticeship program, and A subset of that is the German apprenticeship model, as you heard about some of the career academies. Internship, cooperative education, you could call it co-op. Employability skill development, you may hear called that by the acronym ESD. That's a category. We have roughly 3,500, between 3,500 and 4,000 of our students in ESD, which is basically those students who we couldn't get the perfect match to related coursework. For example, we don't have a match from construction coursework they've taken to a job on a construction site, but they do want to work, and they're working at McDonald's. Well, we're not going to fool anybody and think they're learning construction skills at McDonald's, but they are learning employability skills, and they're learning transferable employability skills that when they do get into construction business, hopefully, that learning how to work with others, that teamwork, that time management, that how to respond to a supervisor, showing up on time, showing up, and how to dress correctly. Those are all transferable skills. So we have a lot of that going on. And of course, Great Promise Partnership is a nonprofit foundation in the state, run by Mike Beatty, and since most of y'all politicians, I know you know Mike Beatty, because he's what I call a local politician. And Terry's laughing at that, and knows it's the truth. But Mike Beatty, he is just an advocate for this. He just lives, eats, and breathes this. He does a lot of work working with companies around the state, bring them to the table, and to get them to work with our at-risk youth and involve them in our programs. So we really appreciate what he does. This is our delivery model. Basically, plug in the boxes on the left, whatever programs you do in high school. Here's some examples. And then the coordinator you see is the box with the oval, with the rounded corners. And their job is to put kids in these various placements working with employers. So there's like one person per school that's the connection and the link and the liaison between the programs in the school and the business community out there in the community. A few program requirements, we're looking for students that we pretty much know are going to be successful on the job site. If we put students out with businesses and there's not success, the businesses will become discouraged and decide they don't want to work with the program. So keeping our program viable and keeping it going is making sure those students are successful. So there's a lot of coordination and looking at and trying to put the right student in the right place and the students who are really prepared. We don't want to put students out there in a situation where they're going to fail because we didn't properly screen them or make sure they were prepared before we put them out there. We talked a lot about this graduation rate for South County's graduation, about 95. All students who take CTA statewide in the 94.5. Well, when we look at the group that's just the work-based learning students statewide, you can see by this statistic here, it's 99.5. Those are not the students dropping out of your high school. If they're the students in our program, they're the students that's going to finish. It's very rare. You can see 105 out of almost 20,000 students that were in work-based learning dropped out this past year. A few success stories. A guy named Justin Sweat goes to Jordan, or went to Jordan. They pronounce it in Muskogee Jordan for all of you locals. Jordan High School. In 2013, he was in the 3rd class of the Pratt Whitney internship. Now, Pratt Whitney is a company that's very, very involved in our program. They basically solved their skill gap, hiring shortage they had, and you talk to Tom Bodie, the President Pratt, and he'll tell you all these things about what a challenge they had trying to recruit engineers and mechanics from all over the country, what a failure it was, and the money they spent was just in the cycle. And they've solved it through our, really our youth apprenticeship program. Now, it says internship here because Pratt came from Connecticut's home base where they had issues with unions. And in their terminology, apprenticeship has a bad connotation because of some experiences they had with apprenticeship and the unions in North. They came to Georgia right to work state to escape all that. So they absolutely, we can't use the term apprenticeship with them. So we do the same thing we've always done. We just call it internship to appease them. So they created this internship program, and these students would go to work Monday through Thursday, but they didn't work in this particular job on Friday. So Justin would come back to school wearing his Pratt uniform. He'd come back to the metals and welding classes. He'd help his peers. He'd talk to them about what he did on the job, and he would make them understand the soft skill side of it, the technical skill side of it. He's been hired full-time. He's currently seeking his FAA, airframe and power plant AOP license. All of his post-secondary training is being paid for by Pratt. He's moved up, is now a supervisor. And he's recently just been moved to a new team at Pratt for the new geared turbofan GTF engine, which is their latest innovation. If you hadn't heard anything about that, it's supposed to like turn the market for jet engines on commercial aircraft on its head. They've got orders already they can't fill for 7 years, and they're just ramping up. They're building a whole new plant, ramping up the new workforce. And Justin is now part of that new team that works on this new engine. And he's also, most recently, the biggest success of this is he's moved up to supervisor. He's now one of the mentors that mentor our work-based learning students coming into that program like somebody did for him when he started. Second example is a student named Lauren Sutton from Thomasville High School. That's Thomasville City, not Thomas County. And she's currently a senior and a youth apprenticeship student. She's a youth apprenticeship student with Cleaver Brooks. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's a huge company that builds big industrial boilers with elaborate controls and whatnot on it. So she's hired as a procurement specialist. Now, she's still a senior in high school at this point. She searches worldwide for parts used in the boilers and controls and makes recommendations to buy maybe a different one because it's better or cheaper or whatever to her supervisor. And when there's a recommendation for a source change of the part, she makes the presentation to the controlling board. She does the report. She's an Excel expert. She was given an opportunity to go to their headquarters in Canada to meet with what's called the International Improvement Team. And she obviously has received a big raise. Soon she'll turn 18. Soon as she turns 18, she's going to be in their 401k program. She's still a senior in high school now and receive matching funds. The company is going to pay all of her college tuition for textbooks in exchange for agreeing to work part-time for the company while in school. And then when she graduates, obviously, staying and working with them. The last one is a student named Jacob Martell, who's also from Jordan High School in 2014. He was an apprentice at Swift Spinning, which has now been acquired by another company, as industrial maintenance mechanic. Now, if you know, that's one of the most, other than truck drivers, probably the most sought-after position in the state. We're talking about skills gap. There's more companies screaming about industrial maintenance people than anything else I've heard. This student was definitely a dropout. He was already 18. Was a junior in high school, and just didn't see schools away from him to finish and was ready to drop out. And Tim Benson, who's my coordinator there, came across this young man. Basically, he needed a job, he had to work, he had to live on his own. He was basically a homeless student in school. And so as a junior, he got him involved in the program. And the company he started working for also worked weekends to make extra money just because he's a student trying to make his own living and stay in school at the same time. In 2015, he received our Youth Apprenticeship Completed of the Year Award, as well as the award from the local Exchange Club for Student of the Year. And as soon as he graduated, he was hired full-time. He now received full benefits from the company that was there. He has since enrolled at Columbus Tech and studied industrial maintenance, and he's recently been promoted to supervisor, which is a lead tech, which means only one other person in the company hired him. And obviously, this is a huge success story for the student. Here's some of the benefits on this slide for our employers. It's a way for them to create their own workforce, basically to grow their own, give students an opportunity, and train their future workforce. Big that Tom talks about all the time is how to reduce costs of recruitment, training, and retention. Basically, Pratt solves this problem for their company through this program. Lots of other companies around the state, obviously. We got about 12,000 companies that work with our programs. Lots of companies that figure this out, but there's lots of companies that have not figured this out yet. So, benefits to students, the way I know you have access to PowerPoint. Some of the challenges we face are reluctance of employers to hire kids under 18. All of our coordinators in the state are not full-time, some of them do it part-time. We have a lot of employers that don't understand the Fair Labor Standards Act. We spend a lot of time trying to make them understand that it is not an impediment to them involving kids from our program. We have too many places where students have to acquire their own jobs because of the manpower our coordinators have, we need to have our coordinators out there creating jobs that are the right jobs for them, like the examples I showed you. The level of employability skills, I'm constantly working on. We have to make sure the students have these employability skills, or they will not be successful when we move them out there. And making sure we have places from all our different programs in the school is a big thing that we work on. Some of the great things we do to support that, obviously I mentioned CCRPI. We have a lot of professional learning activities. We have a manual and a website. If you're interested in knowing a lot about work-based learning, I'll give you the website. It's GA for Georgia, WBL.org, not .com. So please go to GAWBL.org. You'll learn more about work-based learning than you want to know. We have 24 standards that guide our program. We have weighted funding in the form of FTE as well as competitive grants for our youth apprenticeship program, which, by the way, is kind of unique. When I talk to my peers from lots of other states, we have a big advantage in this funding piece that other states don't have, and that's why Georgia has the best #1 work-based learning program in the United States with the most students involved of any program. GACTE, organization that we're a part of, and how we structure and let the teachers have ownership and run this organization for themselves around the state is a biggie for us. And of course, data collection, we collect a lot of data, and that's how we know so much about our program and numbers and statistics and so forth. We did a big study on employability skills. I mentioned to you that's a big key for us is employability skills. This is a booklet that our task force produced. It has some basic recommendations. If you would be interested in this, we have copies. We can send you as many copies if you want to. If you contact me or Dr. Wall, either one, we'll be happy to send you copies of that booklet that guide our school system use. There's actually indicators in there what legislators, policymakers, those kind of decision makers should do to affect this. A lot of what you talked about today. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions for my time. I'm out there and answer those when we move on.
Sure. Thank you very much for the presentation. You said you were getting at-risk students.
Yes.
And then you put up what you look for. You have to have good grades and good attendance and that list. But a lot of times, I would have thought that at-risk students would be showing the problems they were having by not having the best of grades and not having the best attendance and all. How did you?
Well, sometimes they are. I notice that's why we use a subjective term. We say good grades. We don't say every kid's got to have a 95, every kid's got to have a 90, every kid's got to have at least 85. I mean, we say to school systems, you've got to look at the situation, you've got to look at the student, and you've got to find what works. So, you know, we have school systems that it's very competitive, and they have way more kids than they have employers that occupy, and they'll put the bar up high, and any kid that got at least 90, you know, probably don't have a chance to get the program. We have systems in the state where only kids passing the course, they would look at it. So it's a variation depending on the situation where we are. Yes, sir. Oh, I didn't mean to supersede Mr. England's authority to recognize you.
Great program, but I noticed one term that you did not use, technical system.
Yeah.
College, technical
Yeah.
college
Yes.
system of Georgia.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do y'all
Interact with them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
remember, we're gonna move on with ready program, and, you know, obviously these students are maybe not on college track, so why are we having a dual program here, or is it?
No,
Where does the technical system fit in?
Yeah, we're very involved in the technical system. Now, remember, about 40 career academies exist in the state that have dual enrollment programs. We have work-based learning programs in every one of those. Matter of fact, some of the strongest programs are in the career academies. They have roughly 20,000 dual enrollment students, 2,000 from career academies. And a big number of those are from work-based learning. So we're very involved with them. And we have a lot of students in work-based learning which take their technical related coursework to qualify for work-based learning from the technical college. For example, the success story I showed you from Pratt Whitney, Well, the course we have to have to get in that Pratt Whitney program is called Certified Manufacturing Specialist. The CMS program is only offered at the technical college. So every one of those students have to go to Columbus Tech to take that course to even apply for that work-based learning program. So yeah, we're very involved. Okay?
Thank you, Wayne. In one of your slides, you made reference to the fact that you had difficulties getting employers to hire the 18-year-olds.
Yep,
We
yep,
passed
yep.
legislation 2 years ago,
Yep.
which provided a bit of an incentive
Yep.
for a break on the workers' comp
Mhm.
interest. How effective has that been? Is that beginning to get permeated into
It
the
is.
minds of the employers?
You know, trying to think of our guy from Insurance Commission, what's his name? I can't remember. Anyway, you know, he tried to caution us that this is gonna take a while. It ain't gonna happen instantaneously. It's gonna take a while for the employers to find out about it, for them to hit the insurance companies up for the discount. And for those of you who might not be familiar, Eddie Lumsden was one of the sponsors of that bill, House Bill 402, which provides a discount to workers' comp insurance for employers who hire work-based learning students. But employers are finding out about it. They're hitting up their carrier for the discount. We're getting more and more inquiries about that. I actually have companies now contacting me wanting to know about the program and how do I get involved with it. You know, we produced a booklet on House Bill 402, and I took a whole bunch of them. I took 2 cases of them to our work-based learning conference a week ago at Lake Lanier Islands, and they scarfed them up like crazy, you know. So it's definitely a sign that the coordinators are having activity related to this and needing the information, or they wouldn't be grabbing those booklets to be going out and use them with their contacts and constituents. So yeah, it's taking, it's having an effect, it's taking hold, and we'll see as we go forward, keep some stats on that.
Wayne, you mentioned the Great Partner Promise.
Great Promise Partnership. Yep.
And I have met numerous times with that ultimate politician like me and had conversations with him about it. I'm believing in the program too. Probably the little bit of reservation concern I have would deal with scalability in it. I know the amount of time he and others have spent in building that, how much hands-on time they've taken in going into counties and cities and partnering with businesses to work on changing lives in a positive way of a lot of students.
Yep.
Do you see sustainability as an issue? And I guess the second part of that question would be, what do you think that DOE, do you feel like y'all would be a good home for GPB, or would it be at TCSG, or where do you feel would be a good home for the Great Promise Partnership if we were to kind of pull that into something that you're trying to understand about?
Well, I'll do it backwards and answer your last part of the question. I really don't know the answer. Dr. Wall and I have met with Mike a number of times and discussed this topic. We really have a challenge seeing us as being the home. I know that may, I don't want to speak to Dr. Wall. You probably talk to her. But we talked a lot of those things, so I really don't know that. I don't know where they need to land. Scalability is definitely an issue, and we all know, don't fool ourselves, everybody else. It is a challenge when you're working with FSU. And they do a fabulous job. I mean, they have gone into companies and got their foot in the door where we have not ever been able to do it before. They do have that ability, and they've created a placement for a dozen at FSU. When they create those placements, those at-risk youth now fall on our roles to deal with. Our work-based learning coordinators got to pick them up, do the visits, record the data, award the grade, award the credit, all coordination pieces of that being a work-based learning student. It takes a whole lot more manpower to manage those 6 they would create a placement for than it does 20 or 30 of our others. So scalability is definitely a problem. Of course, you know, we don't talk about this a lot, but, you know, you go out and create a number of placements with those companies, because of the population dealing with it, they're not all successful, regardless of what you say. We can coach them up, we can do what we want to do, but the non-success rate of that group is much higher than others. And so, you know, Mike's got, I don't know what the number is, 20, 30 companies that he's got relationships with. compare that 2030 to 12,000 that we work with in the rest of our program, and keeping those companies happy or making sure we have that success enough that they want to keep doing it, I think is a question that's still out there. I think the jury's still out on that. So I don't know. It's a complex equation. We can't give up on working with those at-risk youth, and we can't give up on doing that. But again, we've been doing that forever. And as I shared with you, we've consistently, year after year, we've had about 16 to 18% of our students that is that population we deal with anyway. And we don't turn down help from them. Like I said, we have an MOU with them. We work cooperatively with them. They had a booth at our conference last week at Lake Lear Island. So, we do everything we can to make that a viable piece of the program. But it is difficult. It is a challenge. It takes more resources, takes more manpower. And honestly, I just don't know the answer to the last part where they need to be. Any other questions? Well, I know this PowerPoint will be available to you, and anything I can do to help you. Let me say one last thing. I know the focus of this whole session is about rural communities and what do we do to help rural communities. Let me just throw a couple of things out. One thing we have to do a better job with is connecting the businesses in the rural communities and our coordinators. I can't tell you how many emails I get from companies where they've heard about the program, they want to know more about it, and then I hit my coordinators up. I want to know, why in the world did they not already know about your program? Their business is like less than a mile from your school. So we got to connect the businesses and the coordinators. Another thing we have to do is we have to focus on small businesses and entrepreneurs in smaller communities, because we can go to Forsyth County and we got all the big companies that we want to work with all day long, corporations. But when we go to the small communities, if we ain't working with the small companies, I'm talking about 1 and 2 and 3 employees sometimes, or individual entrepreneurs where they'll take a kid on and almost be just a mentor to that kid, then we're missing opportunity, because that's the bulk of what's in some rural communities. So we got to work with the smaller ones. We've got to connect our coordinators in those businesses better. So there's a number of things that we're looking at and that we're identifying to do and work on. But we all got to work together with that. So anything we can do to help you and connect, and I would say any businesses in your community, tell those businesses there is a work-based learning coordinator, whether you know it or not, in your school. Go to that school, seek them out, learn about the program, find out what they do, find out how they can place a student with you and how you can become an active part of this program. And anything I can do to help you, or Dr. Wall can do to help you.
Got a couple more
Got another one? Uh-oh, I spurred some questions.
One I hope you know a little bit about the funeral business, because you're either fixing to get a question about the funeral business, or you're fixing to learn something about the funeral business. Representative Bentley.
Well, since you said it, if you're looking for a business to partner with, the funeral home certainly could be a partner for you. Yeah, because we need
we have some students
embalmers, we need people to do hair, we need all of that. So
we have students in funeral homes, by the way.
See?
Yes, we do.
See my colleagues, you see that?
We absolutely do. When I look at the employer list from our database, there's a number of funeral homes that employ our students. And, I don't know, some of us in the room might get a little squeamish about that, but there's some kids that want to be funeral directors or whatever. And
well, I'm glad to hear that. I really am glad to hear that.
Somebody,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, my question is, how can we identify these coordinators in our communities?
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay, so let me tell you, we have a tool on the Georgia DOE website called the Georgia Career Pipeline. And if you go to the Georgia Career Pipeline, an employer can drill down, and say, for example, I'm an employer, or let's just take your example. I'm funeral homes. Well, that's a hard one, because I don't know what program we're going to connect that to. Let me do an easy one, and we'll come back to funeral homes. I'm an employer, and let's say I need welders, okay? So I want to know who's teaching welding in the state. So I can do a search by region, and it'll tell me there's 4 schools within this distance that teach welding. Well, then I can click on it, and it'll tell me which school it is, and then it'll drill down in that, and it'll tell me how many classes of welding there are and how many kids are in it. So, I can drill down and find out that, 20 miles from me, there's 40 kids in a welding class, and in the other direction, 15 miles, there's 60 kids in a welding class and so forth. I can find out where kids are learning skills related to my business through the Georgia Career Pipeline. It also has the contact information for the superintendent, the CTA director, the work-based learning coordinator, the people in the school that you want to contact when you find information about your career area. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay?
One last question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. You made me think when you talked about the employers not knowing and connecting them. Yesterday, we had somebody from an authority, an economic development authority, say, I'm tired of the beauticians. So there's a part of me that wonders, are we competing for the same students sometime, and therefore the employer doesn't really, maybe we're putting too many in cosmetology or in this. We've heard that throughout the years instead of brass touching base with the real employment needs within the community. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you sometimes feel that there's competition going on? And I know that's a delicate question.
Yeah, I don't know about the word competition, but I know there's situations in our schools where maybe we do need other programs than the programs that exist. And I've heard that a number of times. How many cosmetologists do we need? Culinary arts, how many chefs do we need, and so forth. One of the things Dr. Wall's done that's one of the greatest things we've done is on somebody's slide earlier, it had item number 3 was connect to the economic development, education and economic development. Well, she's created a pilot program we're doing where we have 5 schools that's going to pilot a system for becoming what we call economic development partnership credential, or I don't know what it's going to be called, but they're going to get some kind of recognition as being connected to economic development and paying attention to that. And a piece of that is analyzing in your community what is the economic development potential and what program should you have, and is it the truth that maybe this program needs to go and I need this program instead. For example, I know one of the biggest needs in our state, if you talk to people, is logistics. Logistics, I mean, this state's become one about moving goods from the port to everywhere else in the country, and truck drivers and all those kind of things. So we got the biggest need area, listening to industry, being logistics and transportation, but we only got 4 programs in the state doing it. So somebody's got to decide, we need to be putting this program in, and maybe we don't need that one. That's a delicate balance. That's a local system decision. But, obviously what we do in work-based learning is once that decision's been made, whatever program that is in the school, we want to be serving that program and placing kids in every program we have and whatever opportunities we can find out there in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dwayne. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take about a 10-minute break, so please be back in your seats, ready to go at 10:15.
Back to our seats. We're getting ready to start back.
Oh.
All right, everybody, let's take our seats. Patty, Mac. Okay, we're going to start with the Youth Leadership in Action program. We're going to hear from Dr. Matt Bishop and Lauren Healy from UGA Fanning Institute, and Sean Callahan, who's the principal at Walnut Grove High School in Walton County. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for the opportunity to present today. I'm Matt Bishop. I serve as director of the Fanning Institute at the University of Georgia. We're one of 8 public service and outreach units at UGA. I know you guys are familiar with our sister unit, the Carl Vinson Institute of Government. I know you've heard from Small Business Development Center at UGA, and I think later this month you're going to be hearing from Vice President Laura Meadows and the Archway Partnership. We're all one big family at UGA under the mission of public service and outreach. We, in particular, represent the Fanning Institute for Leadership Development. We have a mission of working throughout the state of Georgia on community leadership development. We work in about 200 communities with about 12,000 different people on an annual basis through our community leadership development programming for both youth and adults. Our core philosophy with Fanning and what we do in our leadership development programming is to get leaders in communities prepared to effectively engage in community and civic affairs. Our lens is community, and we're all about trying to strengthen communities through that whole leadership development mission. We're multidisciplinary. We have folks on our faculty with backgrounds in adult education, in youth development, even a couple of attorneys that help us with things like community conflict resolution. But today we're going to focus in on our Youth Leadership in Action curriculum. And I just want to spend a couple of minutes giving you a little bit of background on the curriculum and then turn it over to Lauren Healy, who's the real expert in the curriculum itself. Youth Leadership in Action was developed in conjunction with the Georgia 4-H program back in 1996. What we heard from 4-H back in the mid-90s was that they had all sorts of programming in youth development. Whether young people were showing livestock or engaging in public speaking, what was missing was a curriculum that focused on young people getting more effectively engaged in community affairs. And so the partnership between 4-H and Fanning was to develop a research-based curriculum that included, research-based best practices on how young people could more effectively. What it did was it mirrored our adult programming and community leadership programming. So that was done in 1996. What our curriculum inherently does, however, is we empower local people to end up training others in the curriculum. It'd be one thing for our 18 faculty members to travel the state, which we do that, of course, but what we're really good at is training others in the curriculum to be able to teach it in their respective communities. Just 3 years ago, we saw the need to update the curriculum, and what we really saw was the opportunity. Georgia 4-H is going to attract a certain type of individual. The best and the brightest are what's going to be attracted to the Georgia 4-H program. Those chamber-based youth leadership development programs are also going to attract a certain student in the community. So working with communities throughout the state, what we've observed is that there are other students that can benefit from leadership development, skills training. And so the curriculum now, the rewrite of the curriculum 3 years ago, really focused on how do we go younger, how do we go into middle schools and even into K-5 systems, and also how do we address young people who may not otherwise ever be exposed to leadership training. So with that, let me turn it over to Lauren, and she's going to walk you through exactly what the curriculum is all about.
Thank you. Good morning. Before we started our presentation, we went around and gave everybody a handout that provides a snapshot of all the different curriculum kind of levels that we have at Fanning. So you have that there for you, but I do want to reiterate that the curriculum that was developed in the early 90s with sort of what we consider the experts in youth development, the Georgia 4-H program, we've continued to build on that, and then we rewrote it and expanded it, adapted the lessons to meet the 21st century student, provided some technology integration in 2014. And we also know, as many of you know, that leadership is not an event. Leadership is not a workshop. Sometimes it isn't even a program. Leadership is a process that can really only be mastered and honed in the context of practicing leadership. So one of our goals with expanding the curriculum to the lower age levels was that it would be a vertically aligned leadership experience, starting with kindergarten students through middle school, through high school, and then complete the pipeline to the adult and community leadership program that already exists in communities. We also, while we have a curriculum, we go to each community and customize it based on what the community's challenges and needs are. So while we have it in a nice, neat notebook that we give people, we really rarely just pull it off the shelf and use that curriculum. We really work with the stakeholders, we work with the school systems in some cases, and customize a leadership curriculum that's really going to meet the needs of their community. And another very key component of our leadership program is that incorporates authentic youth engagement and authentic youth voice. In a textbook about the rural brain drain called Hollowing Out the Middle, these two sociology professors went and lived and embedded themselves in a rural community for 2 years. And they conducted a series of interviews, and they really said that youth from rural communities fall into one of 4 categories. They're either achievers, the ones that are the captains of the football team, the valedictorian, the track star, that leave the community, go on to pursue an education, and rarely return. Then there's the stayers, the ones who aren't necessarily the class president, but the ones that are going to stay in the community, take the agricultural jobs, work in the industries that are supporting the rural communities. Then there's also the seekers, and those are people who don't necessarily have the educational qualifications to get into the best university, but will join the military or look for other opportunities to seek life outside of their rural community. And then there's the returners, the ones that leave and then come back. And what these researchers found were that there were a ton of resources, engagement, involvement, and opportunities that were made available to the achievers in the community, which usually represents about 5 to 10% of the community. And so it was investing all those resources and time into the students that were leaving. But those same resources and same time and same level of engagement were not given to the ones who were staying or to the ones that were returning. And that's really the lifeblood of rural communities, right? And so we've really looked at positive youth development practices in developing our curriculum to encourage youth to get engaged in the community, to help the community be engaged with youth so that they'll feel more confident and willing to stay as they have families and start to work. So our research-based framework that guides the entire curriculum is really the mastery of 3 things. We begin with a mastery of self, understanding what your own personal leadership preferences are, leadership characteristics. Once you complete that mastery of self, then you move on to the mastery of relationships and being able to work with others who are the same as you and others who are different than you. And then once you kind of master those two things, then really taking that and moving it to action. So now that you have this leadership skill development, what are you gonna do? What's the legacy you're gonna leave behind? What's the impact that you're gonna have on your community? So I feel like 7's the magic number here because we talked about the 7 mindsets and the 7 habits of the leader in me, but we also have the 7 principles of leadership development according to Dr. Fanning. And one of those is everybody has leadership potential. So that's what we teach first and foremost. It doesn't have to be the class president. It's not necessarily always the principal or the president. Everybody can learn leadership, again, through the process of practicing those leadership skills. So starting the beginning of the pipeline is elementary school, which really provides the foundation of leadership. What a leader is, what a leader isn't, who are leaders in your life. And we've divided those into 2 separate guides to meet the developmental needs of elementary school youth, those that are in primary grades, kindergarten through 2nd grade, and then a separate activity guide for youth who are in 3rd through 5th grade. And again, this is vertically aligned, so the activities do not duplicate. So if you have a student that does youth leadership in action in kindergarten, they can continue their journey all the way through 5th grade. We piloted this program system-wide at all 10 elementary schools in Colquitt County. Happy to see my Colquitt County friends here. We got feedback from those teachers about how it actually looked in the classroom. We've adapted the curriculum to reflect those changes and suggestions and are now ready to roll that out statewide. Then moving on to the middle grades, kind of the second stage in the pipeline, the collaborative leadership. With the elementary school, we introduced the concept of awareness of self and also the awareness that people exist outside of you. But this is really, now that you have an awareness that people are different than you, how do you truly work together to focus on critical problem solving and real life problems? And so it's a perfect complement for project-based learning in the classroom. And we are also developing that curriculum in cooperation with a school in Barrow County. So this similar with Colquitt County, we're going to work with the school system, get the feedback from the teachers, do it in the classroom, and continue to develop that as we see what works best. And then finally, our high school curriculum is currently being used in 89 youth development programs statewide, and that's both community leadership programs and in-school programs. We also have college immersion programs for students or for school systems or communities who are interested in bringing students to the campus at UGA. We let them meet with the admissions directors. We take them to eat in the dining hall and really let them know what they need to be successful in a post-secondary institution. It integrates authentic youth voice and civic engagement. Again, we're trying to give youth the opportunity to speak about what's important to them and give them the tools to be able to act and make change on issues that they find important. And we're also working with 2 schools right now in using our high school youth leadership in action curriculum to support the positive behavioral intervention and support programs at the school, so PBIS. And we're very excited to see what that outcome is going to be as we infuse the leadership lessons into the classroom and seeing how that improves school climate and student achievement, as the research already shows that it does. And so we're excited to hear the outcomes of that. And then finally, we have sort of a 4th level of the pipeline called Career Leadership Smarts. It was piloted and developed in cooperation with 2 college and career academies, one the oldest career academy in the state and one was the newest at that time. And it is the same research-based competencies that we know is associated with community leadership development, but with an application to employability and workforce skills. And so we piloted the program with middle schoolers and high schools, had very great results with that. While it is very usable in college and career academies, it's a program that could easily be scaled to other schools as well. It's the same kind of skills that any student who's gonna enter the workforce is gonna need. So I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Callahan. We've been working very closely with Walnut Grove High School over the past 3 years, doing a student steering committee leadership program, and then they're also one of the schools who's infusing our curriculum into the school day to see how it can improve their student achievement. Get out of your way.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. It's important, coming from a being a principal in a school that's around 39% free and reduced lunch. A school, when I first got there 3 years ago, some context about Walnut Grove High School was our CCRPI was at 71.1, our graduation rate was at 78.3, and in the context of Walnut Grove, the city itself, the mayor said we're completing our sewage program in the city of Walnut Grove, which is a good thing when you look at growth. But also we had a community that was really proud of their school as well. And so when I got there 3 years ago, looking at Walnut Grove High School and looking at what we are doing, it was a school that was doing pretty good. I mean, it was on the verge of doing some things, but we still hadn't figured out what that was. And when I got there, interviewed every personnel and interviewed groups of students before we even started. And what kept coming up was the culture of the school. The culture, I don't feel like I'm part of the school from our students. Teachers were concerned that do students feel part of the school? Is the culture where it needs to be? And guys, you know as well as I do, it's not how much you know, it's how much you care. And kids have got to feel that they belong. And I think that's where Walnut Grove High School was 3 years ago. So we researched our leadership team, our teachers, because this was something that was huge for us. And even it was so important that we looked at our vision to look at what is it, why are we here? You can talk about the what and how, but you've got to really decide why what we do is important and why answering that question. And so when we talked about this and we had that information from students and we had that information from teachers, this is our division which we came up with, and basically it was about kids, which it should be. Every school should be about kids. And our vision was give students a voice. But how do we do that? And so we said, there's some things out there we can use. Some other school systems are doing this, but being in education for 30 years, being in the schoolhouse for 30 years, what works is when teachers and the people in the building really take ownership in developing and working it through. What I'm going to describe to you today is we didn't have this all figured out. When you're looking at leadership, and I think Lauren's exactly right, it's a process. It's a process. You don't sit there and decide this is what we're going to do and this is the way it's going to end. It doesn't work that way in anything we do. It's a process. So our student voice was we want students to feel part of the school as far as culture. We want them to feel that if they feel part of the school, that things are going to happen. And so when we found the Fanning Institute, and guys, they're 40 miles from us. And the Fanning Institute, when we researched who can do this for us, the Fanning Institute we thought would possibly fill that bill. So we had them come down, we spoke with them. This is what we want. Lauren and Matt are exactly right. They have modules, but it wasn't fitting what Walnut Grove High School needed. It wasn't fitting our need. So we developed from the leadership, 7 leadership pieces, we developed what was good for Walnut Grove High School. So it dropped down to 4 because these are the key things we want our kids to walk away with. And so when we developed that, we then created what that process is going to look like. And this is our school. We developed it with the Fanning Institute. And that was the fantastic thing about the Fanning Institute is that they're there helping you develop this. They're there to be your benchmark. Okay, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? Because guys, if you want kids to get from point A to point B, you've got to understand the process. Kids have to understand the process as well. So our process was this. We developed these 4 modules. We sat down with Fanning Institute. We sat down with kids. We developed what was good for Walnut Grove High School. So our first year is we developed 2-semester program, a 2-semester process. Our teachers nominated kids, around 40 kids first semester. They nominated around 40 kids second semester. Because guys, we really wanted to give students a voice. We really wanted to look at our school culture. We really wanted kids to feel that they belong to our school. And guys, you know as well as I do, there are kids walking the hall that have never been tapped that say, hey, you know, I believe in you. And that's what this nomination did. Hey, Sean, who's probably got a 2.0, but that teacher saw something in him and she nominated him. So Sean was part of this 40 group. Each month they had an hour and a half, 2-hour presentation developed by us. Fanning Institute facilitated that. So they got this leadership, wealth of leadership, how to work along, get along with people, how to make these leadership decisions, how to look at what's best for your school. What's your legacy? What do you want to leave for Walnut Grove High School? Guys, that was powerful because that was the avenue to give kids a voice. And guess what they had to do? Our one stipulation with the Fanning Institute that these kids walked away with, that they developed their legacy, what they were going to bring back to Walnut Grove High School. Guys, it was huge. It was huge, the success that we got from kids developing what we want to make Walnut Grove High School look like and what is it we want to leave. And let me give you some examples of what they developed. We as adults don't think like kids. We think we do, but we don't. We want to, but we really need to listen. We don't underestimate the worth of listening to a kid. And that's what this whole, with working with the Fanning Institute and what we developed did. Like I told you, each semester they developed a project. They came up with things like freshman festival, sophomore festival. What that was is that we thought we were letting kids know what we had to offer at our school. Now, this is driven by kids. They didn't realize there was a chess club. They didn't realize there was TSA. They didn't realize that there was CTA. And these are freshmen. We think we told them. It really didn't resonate. So these kids developed a festival for our freshman class, the clubs, the presidents, and they went through that and got a hands-on, face-to-face, hey, this is our club. We want to tell you about it. They developed what they call the Warrior Day. We don't call it Field Day in education. That means kids are having fun, so we don't want to call it that. But the kids came up with a Warrior Day where these high school kids got to go. They went to classes the first part of the day, but then they had a Warrior Day because our mascot's Warrior. They had a half a day where it was a field day kind of thing, but we also had some educational pieces. We brought in speakers. Kids came up with this. Then kids, after a couple of sessions, came up, you know, Dr. Callahan, this group, we feel we don't recognize we don't recognize kids enough. Kids came up with what they call Everyday Warrior. Everyday Warrior is that once a week, with technology is beautiful, teachers can nominate Lauren. Lauren Healy did. She helped this student that was in a wheelchair and helped this student get to class. This teacher saw that. She submits it. Guys, our first year doing this, we recognized, now mind you, we only have 1,300 kids, 1,367 in our school. We recognized over 1,200 students last year. We're in the process of recognizing over 2,000 kids, where the recognition is the teacher sends it out. Students that were in the steering committee go on Friday morning. They deliver a Snickers bar and read what that teacher said about them in front of the whole class. It takes 2 minutes. Kids came up with that. Through the Fanning Institute, through the leadership process. Guys, that's building community. Because what came from that is kids felt more comfortable then to even say, hey, we want to meet with the mayor, Lamar Lee of Walnut Grove. We've got a roundabout out in the city that we want to do something with. We want them to pay half of it, though. Do you know these kids pulled together? They had a meeting with the city council and the mayor. Now, guys, these are the Sean Callahans, the regular old Joe that was walking the hall every day. These aren't our kids that are academically, they're valedictorian. These are Sean Callahans that walk the hall every day, that were nominated by the teacher because they saw something in that kid. They met with the mayor. They got that circle partly paid for by the city. They also tapped into FFA. They had some grants. They also tapped into some other resources. That's what building community is about. And these are kids. Guys, I'm telling you, these are kids that wouldn't normally do this. And finally, guys, when you look at the influence of home, you know, when we look at the student performance, I'll get to that. I told you what our scores were to begin with. When you look at community, that's building community in your school. That's building community in your community. That's when the city council and the mayor and the different folks outside that want to see these kids, because the other part of it is the influence of home is huge. If I didn't have one, I've had hundreds of parents say, you know, my kid, I can't believe my kid's doing this. I can't believe my kid's talking in front of people. And guys, what I'm telling you is real. This is by a school developing because you cared about leadership and you cared about kids building your culture. What's the impact? What's the unrepresented student, what the impact they did on our school? Guys, this year, our graduation rate was 86.3. Our CCRPI was 77.3. We weren't doing this because of our test scores, guys. That was the end. That was the outlier that happened. That was the impact of our school, guys. It's beautiful to watch. Fanning Institute they help us develop, and we really can work together as a team. And as a school, as a principal, I want to do what is best for our kids. We want to hear what's best for Walnut Grove High School. I can't compare to other schools. I can only do what Walnut's good for Walnut Grove High School. That's our story, guys. It's been great. It's been great to see these kids, that they feel they're part of it. They feel that they can achieve. And it's the Sean Callahans that are walking the hall, the average Joe. So thank y'all.
Okay, do we have some questions? Don?
I want to ask, last gentleman,
Sean Callahan.
Sean Callahan.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just asking this really because I mean, all of you do, but you seem like you really would be a great principal, and you've done a really good job. But I'm wondering on this program that you were talking about, where the teachers identified, you know, guy in the hall, stuff like that, which is really good. And I mean, I'm just asking this. I'm a very pro teacher and everything like that, but I'm just trying to find out why would that not be happening? Why does it not happen anyway? Why don't teachers? I mean, what is that? I mean, I'm asking you because you look like somebody would kind of know that. Why don't teachers? I mean, you have some kid that's a 2.0 student and kind of disengaged, and what is it that's happening that? Here again, I'm not blaming teachers, but why isn't there more engagement between that, identifying those people and those kids and getting them involved?
So when you talk about the teachers are so focused on curriculum. I gotta teach the Shaunas 2.0. That's what I'm focused on. What this provided though was a process that reminded teachers, I've got to take a few minutes. Oh, yes, Sean, I've got to make them aware. And if we don't have anything in schools that make teachers aware of the process, that there's a process to be reminded that, yes, Sean, I'm going to nominate Sean for the steering committee so he gets this because he's got potential. I think that's the difference. Yeah, teachers recognize kids in class, not to dismiss they don't. They do, but this brought it a couple of levels. This elevated the importance of why I chose you. And that's what we wanted. That's the piece that's the difference. Teachers compliment kids and accommodate kids all the time, but this took it to another level. That's the culture we want to create, that every kid's got a voice.
So kind of the formalization of it.
Yes, sir.
Actually makes a difference. That's the question.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
I can add just a little bit to that. I mean, one thing that we know is that leadership training at whatever level translates into people being more engaged in their organizations, more engaged in their communities, and in this case, more engaged in their classrooms. And so what we really try to focus on with the reboot of the curriculum and as applied into the classroom setting, is that through through leadership development skills training, young people will be better, more inspired and better, more inclined to really engage into the community and civic aspect of what that's about. It's not just about learning to the curriculum, but also about engaging as a community in the classroom.
Good, thank you.
Patty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During my years as a county commissioner, I learned about the J.W. Fannin Institute, and we were able to partner with our local high school in Taylor County, and we implemented a youth leadership program utilizing the curriculum from the Fannin Institute. But to my disappointment, after I transitioned over to the State House, the youth leadership program died, didn't continue. So I'm curious to know, this has been really good information you all share with state legislators. Are there any plans to share this same information with local officials like city mayors and council members and the Association of County Commissioners and GMA, those type of organizations?
Our primary client, so to speak, at both the youth and adult level, at the local level is going to be chambers of commerce. And so we do a lot of work with making chambers aware of what we can do. We also partner with the Vincent Institute as they work with the local government associations and those training. But you're right, more work needs to be done to let people know what some of the offerings are.
Well, and as we're trying to expand our curriculum and reach every child, we have exhibited at the school administrators conferences across the state, so Gale, the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders, and so we're trying to get the word out that way as well.
Have you partnered with any of the Family Connections? There's a Family Connection program in every county in the state. Is there any partnerships there?
We have. In fact, one of our faculty members came from Family Connection and does a great job of leveraging their relationships to that end.
Now, when I was a commissioner, my last question, when I was a commissioner, we were able to get, I think, a small grant from the Institute to implement this program. Is that funding still available?
It is not.
Okay. All right.
We use vending machines, parking lot.
You use
So,
what?
yeah, I mean, it's important. I mean, that's that important to me.
Anybody else? Thank y'all very much.
Okay, our next presenter is Miss Amy Jacobs. She is the Commissioner of DeKalb, otherwise known as the Department of Early Care and Learning. Amy has been there now for, I guess, about 3 years? 3.5 years. Of course, she is charged, and her agency is charged with overseeing our pre-K program across the state, along with numerous other things. And so Amy's going to talk to us a little bit this morning about some of the differences that we're seeing in students that participate in pre-K versus those that do not. So Ms. Amy, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And just quickly, a little bit about DeKalb, because in state government world, we're fairly new. We were created in 2004 under then Governor Sonny Perdue to align all of early education. So we consider ourselves the state's birth through 5-year-old early education agency, and we administer more than Georgia's pre-K program, although we are most known for that. But we also license 5,000 child care centers throughout the state, and we're working to increase their quality through our quality rated program. And we also administer our subsidy program, which helps low-income families afford childcare while they either go to work or attend school. So Georgia's pre-K program was established in 1992. We're actually celebrating our 25th birthday this year, and we'll have a big celebration in March, which you'll all receive an invitation to. As you probably know, it's funded by the Georgia Lottery, and it's in every county in Georgia, and we're able to serve about 60% of all 4-year-olds. In fact, 75% of counties serve 60% or more of their 4-year-olds in Georgia's pre-K programs. We're really proud of that. And we're able to do that because we have a public-private partnership. So about half of our classes are in public schools and half of our classes are in private child care settings. So that gives us the ability to serve about 80 to 81,000 children a year, but it also gives parents a choice on where to send their child to Georgia's pre-K program. So we all know how important school readiness is, and we talk a lot about it's important for children to be ready when they enter kindergarten to learn. And we know that if you're ready for kindergarten, you're much more likely to meet that critical benchmark that we all talk about, third grade reading and reading on grade level by the end of third grade. But we know that there's an achievement gap in that third grade reading level. About 2/3 of our students don't meet that benchmark, and that achievement gap can even exist and present itself even earlier in a child's educational career, even as early as 18 months. But what research tells us is that if a child is exposed to an early education environment or an early education program, that they can be successful and really provide that solid foundation for future learning and be ready for kindergarten and meet that third grade benchmark. And pre-K is one of those programs that delivers that high quality education. So today I want to share with you one piece of research that's hot off the presses. I saw your Krispy Kreme. It's kind of like a hot Krispy Kreme. We just completed this research of comparing a group of Georgia pre-K third graders who attended Georgia pre-K and their end of grade test results, and a group of third graders who did not attend Georgia's pre-K program and their third grade end of grade test results. And we were only able to do this by using Georgia Awards, which is Georgia's P20 or P3 workforce longitudinal data system that keeps track of all these students through all the places that they go in our system. And so we researched a full population of children in pre-K, and we even looked at a little subsample of children that receive free and reduced lunch. So we started with 136,000 third graders who took the milestone test in the 2015-2016 year. And then we had to do some matching because you've got to have similar children to match. You've got to compare apples to apples. So we matched two groups of children so they had similarities, like they attended the same kindergarten school, they were free or reduced lunch, their home language was English or it wasn't English, their gender, their race, things like that. And we ended up with two samples. So one sample of third graders that did attend pre-K of about 46,000 and one sample that did not attend pre-K of about 46,000. So this is what we found. Children who attended Georgia's pre-K performed better on the Georgia Milestones third grade end of grade test than those who did not. So you'll see those 4 subjects that are tested in the third grade end of grade test. There's English language arts, math, science, and social studies. And that blue bar, which you'll see is higher in all categories than the orange bar, are the pre-K students. So those students that attended Georgia's pre-K program did better on their third grade end of grade test. Our researchers gave us another way to look at it, and if you ask me to explain it, I won't be able to, but I will tell you I like the way it sounds. It's all about the odds. So the likelihood of third graders who attended Georgia's pre-K program for them to be proficient or distinguished, which are the 2 highest categories in that end of test, they are 10% more likely to score higher in English language arts, 18% higher in math, 9% higher in science, and 12% higher in social studies. So what does that mean? What are the overall findings of that analysis? Those are meaningful differences to show a difference from your pre-K year all the way through third grade. We all know it's obvious, but there are 4 years in between pre-K and third grade. Pre-K is really to get children ready for kindergarten, and to continue to see those results, even in the third grade, is pretty impactful. We also looked at 2 other groups of children within this analysis. One was children that received free and reduced lunch, and one was children whose home language is other than English. And there was an even greater impact for those 2 subsets of students. They had greater gains in that third grade by attending Georgia pre-K. So what are some of the takeaways of this analysis? We would not have been able to do this analysis without Georgia Awards, which I know the legislature and the governor have funded and watched the progression of it being built over the last several years. So that was instrumental in us being able to do this analysis. Georgia's pre-K program, we continue to find that it works. It's a good investment for our state, and this is just another example of the research that backs that up. But what we gained from this and some other research that we've done, the longitudinal study where we're following pre-K from pre-K through third grade, which you also funded several years ago, And so we've got to start earlier to make a bigger impact. Georgia Pre-K is making an impact on children and their positive trajectory, but we've got to start earlier. I'm sure you've all heard the brain development. Your brain develops at 90% by the time you're 5, and it's really influenced by the experience and the environment that it's in. If it's in a quality environment, it's got a much better foundation going forward to build upon. So we believe that we need to start earlier, and our efforts at DECAL will always be focused on pre-K, but we're also focused on quality rated. So as I mentioned, we license 5,000 child care programs throughout the state, and they serve over 300,000 young children every year. And so it's our responsibility to work with those providers to raise the quality of that early education so they're ready when they get to Georgia Pre-K and they have that, that bump when they get to Georgia Pre-K and do even better in kindergarten and on that 3rd grade reading end of course test. Also, and I think you heard from Dr. Bearden earlier from Forsyth County, the alignment between the early learning system, which is not nice and tidy like a K-12 system. It's private businesses all over the state. But the alignment at the community level between the early learning system and the K through 3rd grade early education, early elementary system is so critically important because they're serving the same children and I think they want the same outcomes. So to really have that conversation at the place at the table at the community level is very important so that you can have the same standards for your children. So you ask about barriers for rural communities, and I'll be honest, these barriers that are on this slide are, they're not unique to rural counties. I'll say they're probably amplified for rural. We see this a lot throughout the state as it pertains to early learning. But childcare, for parents that want childcare, they need childcare, they have to have childcare to go to work. It's expensive, especially quality childcare. We just did a market rate study, and it showed us that on average, childcare is about $160 a week, which is over $8,000 a year. You can go to Georgia Southern for less than that. So that's an investment in your child. Whether or not you choose to put them there, you have to put them there because you need to go to work to support your family. But we want parents to have access to quality childcare if they're making that investment, that large of investment in their childcare. There's also limited access to quality childcare. We've got about 1/3 of our programs that are quality rated, so they've gone above and beyond our health and safety licensing requirements, and they've received a 1, 2, or 3-star. But we're working on that, and we're working with them. But in rural areas, of course, there will be fewer because the population's fewer. It's harder to open businesses, things like that. And transportation continues to be an issue, especially for that low-income population. If they don't have their own transportation, if it's not reliable, if there's not public transportation to get their child to child care and then get themselves to work. We also face a workforce issue in early learning in that workforce because they're not paid like the K-12 system is. That's not how it works. 90% of revenue in early learning comes from a parent. Some of it comes from the state through our subsidy program, and a lot of it comes from pre-K for 4-year-olds. But they can't pay their teachers on a teacher salary scale, so a lot of them make minimum wage. So what's the benefit and what's the incentive to be a qualified teacher, to go back and get your CDA, which we do require of lead teachers in childcare? What's the benefit to get your technical college certificate or your diploma when you're only going to be paid minimum wage? So that's an issue not unique to rural Georgia and not unique to Georgia. That's a nationwide issue that we're all trying to figure out. There has been a great emphasis on how do we support early learning in Georgia over the last several years through the legislature and the governor. Last year, y'all added an additional $5.5 million for our subsidy program, and we didn't just focus that on subsidy to serve 50,000 children. We focused that only on quality rated, because if the state's going to make an investment in early learning, which they've made one in pre-K, but even earlier, my position is you only make it in quality rated, which is our assessment of quality in the early learning environment. But obviously, there's a need for greater investment in our subsidy program. We also support our workforce at DECAL. We have a DECAL Scholars Program. We're able to offer some scholarships and some incentives for teachers to go back and get their technical certificate or diploma or associate's degree or bachelor's, and then reward them so that they stay in a quality program. But there's more to be done there. We're very fortunate in Georgia to have the HOPE grant and the HOPE career grant that pays for early learning education, but it's just keeping them in those programs that is the challenge. And then 2 more things I'll mention that we've done recently through the budget process that's really helping our workforce, which is not a salary, but it's professional development, which is just as important. As you know, the governor recommended the Center for Early Language and Literacy at Georgia College last year, and that's been a huge asset because it's not just serving K through third grade. It's really focused on earlier and supporting the workforce for infant and toddler teachers who really need it the most. We do it at DeKalb, but to have the Center for Early Language and Literacy do that as well is huge for that workforce. And then also through last year's budget, we're working with the Governor's Office of Student Achievement to do some infant and toddler classroom language and literacy grants, because we know that the foundation of that quality is really the language and literacy and responsive caregiving. And so we're working in 50 infant and toddler classrooms across the state through a partnership with the Governor's Office of Student Achievement to really bring up that quality in the infant and toddler classrooms where we know we need it most. So the takeaway is I could ask for hundreds of millions of dollars, but I'm not going to do that because I come from the budget background, and that just kind of, I knew I couldn't do that with I just couldn't do it. It wouldn't feel right. But what I would encourage you to do in your local communities, since you are leaders in your local communities, is ask about how's quality rated going in your communities. Make a goal for your community, for all of your providers to be quality rated. Have a birth to 8 team where you all sit down and you talk about the issues of your early learning community. And that's not just, it doesn't have to be convened by DeKalb. In Athens, it's convened by the Family Connection Partnership. In Macon, it's convened by the United Way down there. In Whitfield, they have a successful birth through 8 collaboration there and have been recognized, and that's convened by Family Connection Partnership. But that's an important, no cost, but a lot of hard work way to go back to your communities and promote the importance of early learning and work on increasing the access to early learning in Georgia. Thank you.
Question.
I believe we have a few questions. So Clay, or Tom, whoever not asleep right there, somebody was waiting.
I'll let my chairman. No, go ahead. You sure? Yeah. Okay, you indicated that, you indicated, and I think I've heard this before, make sure I did write it down right, that 2/3 of our students do not read at grade level at 3rd grade.
By the end of 3rd grade, yes.
Even now?
Yes.
We have invested a lot of state resources in pre-K